Good morning. Good morning, everybody. The hour of 10 o'clock having arrived about 5 minutes ago. I call the meeting of February 25th, 2020 to order. And just for the record, wanted to make sure everyone knows that we have opened up an additional space for people who are interested in following the proceedings here today so that they will participate and listen, and we are happy to comply with the Open Meetings Act. So with that, I'd like to ask Member Sadia Covert, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing as I invite our DuPage Care Center chaplain, Reverend Andrew Hogan, to lead us in invocation.
Mr. Chairman, board members, staff, friends, guests of the county, good morning, and of course, happy Punchki Day. In the busyness of our lives, we're not always aware of God's presence, so let us take a moment to reflect and to pray. Almighty and eternal God, as we come before you, focus our minds and hearts upon your will. Remove the many distractions that dissipate our energy. Remind us of our special purpose gathered together in your name, to be stewards and servants. Come to us and be with us. Enter our heart, mind, and spirit. Guide us what we are to do and where we ought to tend. Show us what we must accomplish in order that with your help we may be able to please you in all things. May you alone be the author of our decisions. Grant us a spirit of humility that we may seek to serve. Grant us a spirit of gratitude that we may recognize each moment as an opportunity to serve and each person as a gift and blessing. Grant us a spirit of patience for those who test our goodwill. Grant us a spirit of fortitude for the times when we face fatigue. Continue to bless the work that we do in your name. Continue to bless all the employees and departments of DuPage County. Bless the leadership of the county board and the special residents of the care center. May we continue to be good stewards of this region and its resources. Unite us to your will as we serve you and the people of DuPage County. We ask all these things in your name as you live and reign forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chaplain.
Here.
Covert.
Here.
Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff.
Here.
Elliott.
Here.
Hart.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Krajewski.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Noonan.
Here.
Ozog.
Here.
Pachalski. Renahan.
Here.
Rutledge.
Here.
Selman. Tornatori.
Here.
Zay.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. You did that very well. On to the order of chairman's report. Got a couple of presentations here. First and foremost, I wanted to invite our coroner, Dr. Rich Jorgensen, to the podium. We're so fortunate to have a coroner that is a medical doctor, somebody who has been on the leading edge of our issue exposing the heroin epidemic in this county. We're focusing on that topic again this morning, the incidence of heroin and opioid addiction and overdose. Of course, we know how devastating it is to lose a family member or friend to this deadly illness. Believe me, I've been to too many wakes here in the county. Our DuPage County Coroner, Dr. Rich Jorgensen, tracks the incidence of opioid overdose in our county, and I've asked him to bring his annual report incident here directly to you for your information. Dr. Jorgensen, in addition to tracking these statistics, I think it's important to remind folks that you are equally dedicated to finding solutions through your participation and leadership in the county's HOPE Task Force. So thanks for your advocacy, thanks for your expertise. Doctor, please proceed.
Thank you. Can I ask you, were you going to
mention something about Mike Wolf in your
Yes,
remarks?
in my
okay,
remarks.
then I
it
won't
was.
say anything.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes,
Because his memorial's going on right now.
yes, I was going to handle that.
Thank you for the time I have, since 2013, annually brought you the statistics for DuPage County and where the crisis is in DuPage County. And this is the overview of where we are. Really not much progress. When I became coroner in 2012, 2013, we had a little over 40 deaths, and I was considering that to be a crisis at that point. For the last 3 years, we've had basically 95, 98, and this year 96 overdoses due to opioid deaths. So that's not very rewarding for all the work that we've put into it. I'd like to bring you through the changes that we've had and the differences that are occurring in this crisis, and it's actually changing even as we speak. Heroin is a naturally grown and heroin is a naturally grown and processed product. A plant has to be grown, it has to be harvested, it has to be processed and smuggled across international and national borders because we don't grow any here in America. But unfortunately, synthetic opioids like fentanyl and its analogs can be made right here and can be made a lot stronger and a lot easier. You don't have to grow a plant. It's just made out of chemicals. So what we're seeing is there is a move away from heroin. Heroin is no longer the drug of choice, and this is the number of heroin deaths that have occurred through 2007 through 2019. And you can see that since 2013, the number of heroin deaths have drastically reduced. And if we only look at that number, and if we only look at that as a parameter, we'd say, hey, we're doing pretty well. But starting in 2015, fentanyl started flooding the market. And this is fentanyl and heroin being mixed. So these are the number of deaths in DuPage County due to fentanyl and heroin. And this is the number of deaths due to just fentanyl alone with no other drug, no other opioids in the system. So you can see that we have switched. So this is, I just want to show you real quickly on a year-to-year basis how this happened. Prior to 2015, we didn't have any fentanyl deaths. This illicit fentanyl started coming in from China, especially in 2015, and we started having these deaths. And you can see the red color is the one that is pure fentanyl deaths, meaning that there's no heroin mixed in at all. We started seeing those at the end of 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and this is last year. So you can see the blue is just heroin as a sole drug, and that's almost disappeared. We have now all either mixtures or pure fentanyl deaths. And now we're up to 32. That first year in 2013 or 2015, we had 8 pure fentanyl deaths. Now we're up to 32 where that's the major drug of choice. So there's been a complete change in the picture of the opioid crisis in DuPage County, the state of Illinois, and actually the country. And this slide is a summary of all that. You can see the blue again is heroin, and it is decreasing. As I said, it's no longer the drug of choice. And actually it's the drug dealers that are making this choice because it's harder to grow, transport, and smuggle heroin than it is to make and synthesize fentanyls. So this is our current slide of where we are today. As I said, the game is changing. The drug dealers are making these choices, and these synthetic drugs are not only easier to make, but they're much stronger. I think I've told you that there's one that's 10,000 times stronger than morphine, and we've seen that in our county. You can imagine it's so much easier to smuggle something that's 10,000 times stronger than morphine than a big package of heroin. What I'd like to just do a little talk about that. At this point, I have been told that a number of legislators and officials, state officials, have questioned DuPage County, why we haven't done better. Why don't we have better statistics when some counties are reporting better statistics? And I can tell you that as of today, we're the only county that has published statistics for 2019. When you hear this and when you question how we're doing, I would say it's very, very important to know what we're doing, what the labs are. I know that there are counties in this area that do not use a national standard lab. We have used NMS, which is the gold standard lab in America. They do 250 different tests when we send the blood in, including fentanyls and other things. They are the best lab in the country, and they're the standard. They know what drugs are coming in, and that because they're such a large, wide company. They do trend analysis and add and subtract tests, like when bath salts were really in, they added bath salts, and then now it's kind of gone away, so they've taken those out. We shouldn't be criticized because we do the top-notch gold standard. In the country, the national standard for an overdose is to do a full autopsy, full toxicology, and sometimes even extended tests. Like with these fentanyls and such, we have to do an extended panel of tests, and if we find certain drugs, then we have to do a $250 or $350 additional test to isolate that further. I can tell you that many counties do not have the support that I have of the county board. They are not funded with good toxicology funding and the support to do that. There's a county to the west of us whose county board chairman publicly criticized him for doing autopsies and wasting toxicology money on people that had overdoses. Well, that's not it. The national standard is this is what we do, and we do that in DuPage County, and I appreciate the support that you've given me. Again, when you compare these numbers, there is no standard around the state for how to evaluate an overdose, what toxicology to do, or what labs to use. So I think we put a lot of effort into this. I would like to see these numbers better. Next year, I'd really love to see them take a nosedive as far as how many overdoses we have. But these are the actual stats. I wanted to point out that this last year we did 369 comprehensive toxicology tests. Then sometimes we have to do additional tests on that, which can cost $250 to $325 extra. And happy to tell you, well, our total toxicology spending last year, was $77,679. Happy to tell you that because of the work that we're doing with SUDOR's, which is the statewide unintentional drug overdose reporting system, we were awarded a grant of $60,000, which I gave to Mr. Rafik to cover the toxicology fund. So I was well funded in my toxicology budget, but we almost had that completely taken care of by a grant this year. Another trend is shifting to older ages. We have less teens and less 20s and more people in every decade thereafter. When I first reported these statistics to you folks, the males were 84%, now they're 80%, 16% females. But look at the teens, it was 10% or 11% teens, now it's only 1%. The majority were in their 20s. We had up to 45% in the past, and now it's 26%. And then in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, we have increasing numbers in every one of those decades. I don't really know yet what that means. Does it mean that less young people are starting to become addicted, and so our addicts are becoming older?
Public education efforts, you think?
I don't know the answer yet, but there's definitely a trend, and that's something that is for real. The last trend is polypharmacy. This is just a typical drug screen of a person. I have one that has got 6 more drugs on it that I didn't put up here. But look at this person has got Xanax, morphine, cocaine, cannabinoids, The oxycodone is prescription pills, and 2 different kinds of fentanyl and heroin. So this is what we're seeing very much in our, we used to have 2 or 3 drugs in there. Now these are all different classes of drugs. They're not even in the same group of drugs, and we're seeing a lot of that. So I'm going to leave you with one positive thing. So our DuPage Narcan program has trained over 6,000 professionals, and up to this point has saved over 750 lives. This again is that slide of the deaths that we had in DuPage County. And this is the slide of the superimposed saves that our first responders had in the DuPage Narcan project. So if we wouldn't have saved those lives, can't imagine what the crisis would look like if we didn't have the work that we've been doing. So lastly, the trends are that we have not seen a decrease in overdose deaths. Heroin is no longer the drug of choice. Synthetic opioids are the drug of choice. There is a shift to older ages and polypharmacy. That's it. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Questions? Mr. Healy, followed by Member Rutledge.
Mine's not really a question. It's just a thank you. When you first came on as coroner of DuPage County, I got you to go to the NACO conference, and it was great there is that you immediately assumed the role, because there aren't many like you who are doctors, who are members, who are coroners, and you've taken on the role of helping not only at the national level, but you've also helped dramatically here in the state of Illinois among all the counties here. So I want to thank you, because when I go to other places in the state or nationally, and they know your name and they've talked about that they saw you at the conference, it gives me a sense of pride that you're out there doing this work, not only for DuPage County, but for all the counties and all the people of this country. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Member Rutledge.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. 2 questions. So the ingredients that go into fentanyl, are they readily available, and is there some way that they can make them less available to maybe slow down the issue of fentanyl? And
they are readily available, and most of the fentanyl that is in the country now is coming from China and being filtered through Mexico and South America. So
no chance in making it less available.
So that part we can't control. I can tell you that the government is working very hard to try to stop that transport, but this stuff is so strong. As I said, the carfentanil, 1 grain of carfentanil is the equivalent of a basket of heroin. And there are becoming, like there's meth labs, there's becoming fentanyl labs here in America as well, and they are very readily available.
And then my second question is the demographics for cannabis use, and now that it's legal in Illinois, seem to skew to older populations. So would you expect that some of these numbers may start to come down with the easier access to cannabis?
I don't understand the question.
Well, that less people are going to go to something that is unsafe, untested, and maybe start to move over to a legal product that may alleviate whatever it was they were using for in the first place.
So you're surmising that people will stop using opioids?
She's just speculating that if marijuana is more readily available, do you think it's logical to assume that people that will be their drug of choice over
some of those
fentanyl?
numbers.
I think I understand. No, the statistic, the papers that I presented to you folks show the opposite, that using cannabis increases the
Fentanyl's very addictive.
The falling off the wagon type of thing. So
Further questions? Mr. Hart, followed by Member Ozog.
I just want to reiterate Member Healy's comments about you, Dr. Jorgensen. I really appreciate your input on the HOPE Task Force. I know you have been a leader on this issue and continue to be. The question I have relates to the shifting in terms of the age demographics. Among those who are older age overdoses, do you see that is also tied to fentanyl and more synthetic opioids, or are those more prescription-related overdose deaths?
no, they are related to fentanyl as well. So all of the ones that I showed you are opioid deaths, and actually prescription drug, just purely prescription drug deaths with no fentanyls and no heroin in them went down a little bit. Not sure what that means either, but, people overdosing on OxyContin, for example, they're slightly down, not a lot. So,
Thank you.
Member Ozog?
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. Thank you for your presentation,
Thanks.
Dr. Jorgensen. I unfortunately know of a situation where a family received a package in the mail of fentanyl after the expiration of after a family member expired. Do you know anything about, is there some sort of mail, surveillance or some kind of, it's coming in the mail. Is there
It's
some-
horrible.
I don't know. Is there
We've
any-
had a number of people who overdosed who the living member of the family said, for example, this one lady said, my son received a package in the family, went up to his room, I heard a thump, and he was dead. I can tell you that, I didn't put them in here, but I have many slides that you can go to feelgood.com, chemsomething.com, and buy carfentanil, the stuff I was just talking about, online and have it delivered in the mail. One of them, when I was researching that, one of those online companies said, don't use FedEx and don't use the other one, the Browns, UPS. Use the U.S. Postal Service because it's the easiest way to get the drugs delivered to America. Now, that message has been gotten to Washington, but there's still, they're watching for it, but these small packages with small amounts of these drugs are, being mailed all the time. So that is a horrible story, and we've seen it here in DuPage County a number of times.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further discussion, Member Eckhoff?
I just wanted to take note that Jeff York called the first meeting in 2013 of a committee that eventually became the Hope, what is now the Hope Committee. And back then, I know you were working very hard, along with our state's attorney Bob Berlin and Jeff and Karen Ayala, to get into schools and try and talk to people about it. And it was almost impossible to do that because everyone assumed if you asked or you had a speaker in that the school was admitting they had a problem and a parent didn't want to go, because if the parent went, then they were admitting they had a problem. And because of all the hard work that you and Bob Berlin and Jeff and Karen and other people have done, this issue has been raised a great deal in our community, in our country, and I think that's in the schools, and which is why I think the number of deaths with younger people have gone down. My question was, I know one of the things you're focusing in on was overprescription by doctors of these drugs, and I've been to enough seminars to know that federally has been done, but have you seen any reduction in the prescription by doctors?
Yeah. One of the good things about Illinois is we were never an overprescriber state. We were never in the category of like Ohio or West Virginia, where they just had people writing thousands of scripts and things like that. So we were not an overprescriber, and we have diminished the amount of what they call morphine equivalents across the state. And we've done a great job. I can tell you that every one of the medical societies, whether it's Family Practice Association, the American College of Surgeons, has very much reached out across their membership and have educational things. And then there's people like Central DuPage or hospitals like CDH and Edward and Elmhurst who have had very active programs. Edward and Elmhurst actually monitors their doctors for how many morphine equivalents they write and the prescription that they write, and in a educational way, not punitive way, they try to re-educate and help their doctors, and tremendously diminish the amount of opiates that are written.
Because I think the statistic back 5 years ago was that America alone consumed 90% of the opioids in the world.
I don't think that's changed. It's just we're trying to diminish the amount of opioids that are made and that. And you know that our state's attorney is suing the major, in the name of the county, is suing the 6 major opioid manufacturers because they're just making pills. They're in it for the money, and they're making pills.
Right.
So, thank you.
Further discussion, Mr. Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank you, Dr. Jorgensen. A couple of thoughts here. One, you've been laser focused on this issue and you've never taken your eye off the ball. It's a shame that people always are going to find reasons to criticize. We always expected this crisis to get worse before it got better. It was a trend that was terrifying when it started, and we've done great work to try to bend that curve. But then you introduce a new chemical like fentanyl, and then this pseudofentanyl or carfentanyl, and it's just another issue we have to address. I think we've also been doing some great work, and people forget about the work that the health department has been doing, and as a member of the Board of Health, we've worked very hard with the HOPE Task Force to educate physicians regarding prescription of opioid medications in order to try to reduce
I'm not good at phones, I guess. Sorry about that.
but to try to reduce the use
Yeah.
that's created by starting with prescription medications. So, again, there is hope that continues here, but it is going to be an ongoing effort and a lot of work from a lot of different angles to get this done. And keep up the good work.
You know, as a last advertiser for that, this county, this naloxone program, it's the first county in the country that embraced this. And it was due to the fact that our state's attorney told us to go ahead and do it, and our sheriff and every county official, the health department, the county board, everybody just said we're going to do whatever we can starting in 2013 when other people wouldn't even talk about the crisis. So I think we should be proud of our government in that we didn't shy away from the thing. We just did something. So I'm very proud of all of us.
There was a private sector involvement too,
as well.
remember?
Yes.
So some of the parents, families of young people that overdosed and died, it started with a conversation that I had in front of the casket right there at a funeral home in Elmhurst with a gentleman, the grandfather, and said, "What can I do to help?" And so we organized a group of businessmen, some road builders and construction folks, and I think we raised $50,000 in like 2 weeks, and that was to purchase the first batch of naloxone. And so I'm really pleased that, the people from the community, I think it's most effective when it kind of comes to the forefront that way. But further discussion, I think, were you seeking recognition, Julie? No? Member Renahan?
Actually, you know what, I would like to thank you for putting in the extra time to do the $250 test or whatever. I think it respects the victims,
Yes.
respects the families. It gives us answers that, we can't even begin to understand. And appreciate that. And as far as just a quick question on how would somebody go ahead and get the Narcan?
All you have to do is call the health department, and so that's another thing that through the work that we've done, we received a $1.16 million grant that has three parts, one of which is I'm going to start an overdose fatality review team. We're going to look at every single death and try to figure what can we find out more. So that's part of it. The other part of it is medication-assisted rehabilitation, so getting people on Vivitrol and different things like that. The third thing is to further support the naloxone program and bring it more out to the community. It's already out in the community, but anybody who wants to be trained can call over at the health department, and we've trained hundreds and hundreds of people that are either citizens, firemen, other communities. Our DuPage program is so far ahead that we were actually training people in Cook County because Cook County wasn't doing anything about it, still isn't doing anything about it. But the private citizens you can, and oh, by the way, there is a state law now, the Heroin Crisis Act, which interestingly, as I said, heroin's going away, but the Heroin Crisis Act was the big thing, made it that the medical director of the Illinois Department of Health writes a prescription for anybody in the state to go to any pharmacy and get naloxone. So you can, the good thing about going to the health department is you're going to get it for free. If you go to the pharmacy, it's going to cost you. So everybody should have it.
Yeah, 700 saves. I mean, that's just incredible.
It's incredible, yes.
And the fact, we've gone down to this year, but I think actually the fact that you're looking at it so deeply, we've probably prevented much more,
well, thank you.
many deaths than that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Jorgensen. Moving right along to our next presentation, I'd like to invite Aaron Ailman to the podium. You're all familiar with Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP. I go to a lot of those meetings. Board member Jim Healy is our CMAP representative. First county representative DuPage has had on the executive board, so thank you, Jim. Today I'm pleased to welcome another first for CMAP. Erin Ailman is the first female executive director and only the third person to hold that title. She was appointed unanimously by the CMAP board in June of 2019. I've known Erin for a while. She brings more than a decade of accomplishments in developing transportation and land use policies to the agency. We all know Erin. Her background is Vice President of Metro Strategies, a DuPage County policy and advocacy consulting firm. That certainly informs her perspective, I believe, as will her extensive background as an executive and a planner at CMAP and the Illinois Department of Transportation. So, Erin, welcome. I'm glad you're here. You can join us. Please share your thoughts with us.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. At your place this morning, I left just a fact sheet of information about how we've been working together over the past few years successfully to achieve the goals of our long-range regional plan that CMAP's responsible for developing. So, you may know that metropolitan planning organizations are responsible for programming federal funds across major urbanized regions across the country. This region serves 7 counties, so Cook, Kane, DuPage, Kendall, McHenry, Will, and I think that's all of them. 8.5 million residents, 284 municipalities, and we really work collaboratively to ensure the success of our region. So, for example, in DuPage County, we've programmed more than $71 million in federal transportation dollars for about 37 projects since 2014. And links to a number of those projects are on the one-pager. It's also federally mandated that we develop a long-range plan for the region that looks beyond sort of just the day-to-day needs that we have to make sure that we're aligning our goals and our resources effectively to achieve those long-term goals. So the reason why I'm here today, and as the chairman noted, is that when I was hired by the board, they really wanted me to focus on implementing the 2050 plan, which is the most recent long-range plan. And so it's really critical that we engage the counties as well as municipalities in the proactive steps to get there. So in order for that to be successful, the plan has probably 250 strategies plus in it that we need to do, but I really wanted to take a step back and say, where is CMAP most effective and where can we work with our local government partners to be most effective in implementing the plan? And so through some strategic planning, we've identified that really our critical issues to focus on over the next couple of years are funding a multimodal modern transportation system that connects people and jobs across our region, making sure that our region is economically competitive, that people have access to good jobs and vice versa, get from home to jobs, and then really thinking about how we proactively mitigate and adapt to changing climate that we have. So on funding the multimodal modern transportation system, we really are the transportation hub of North America, and that's our competitive advantage. And if we let that go by the wayside, we again miss out on opportunities to make sure that we have good high-paying jobs in our region. The recent capital bill passed at the state level is a great first step, but again, had we not passed that capital bill, there would still be a gap. Even with the revenue increase for the capital bill, our system projections out to 2050 are 40% underfunded. And largely that underfunding happens on the transit side, and we know that good access to transportation helps people get to jobs across our region here. So, and also as we look to the future and vehicles become more electrified, we again continue to lose out on the efficiencies that the motor fuel tax brings in for us. So we really want to be proactive in addressing these long-term needs that we know are on the horizon but not here today. Some of the other things that we've been talking about are rail grade crossings. So here in DuPage, you have 3 of the most congested rail grade crossings in the region: Stearns Road in Bartlett, Army Trail Road in Bloomingdale, and Maple and Fairview and Downers Grove. And we know that this really impedes our ability to be a great economic center here. So again, those are on our top list of things that we want to figure out how to fund and how to address proactively. Also, with the rise of e-commerce and consumers demanding next-day delivery of their packages, we really need to think about how freight movement across our region impacts our local communities. And I think, too, we have to find a balance between addressing air quality concerns of increased freight congestion, but also getting consumers the needs and the things that they've ordered online. I know I'm guilty of ordering too much stuff on Amazon. So some of the other stuff that I'll touch on briefly that you might be less familiar with is that, economically we're lagging behind our peers. Over the last decade, our regional growth was half the national average. So in our core competitive areas, which are, a few of them are transportation and logistics, biopharma, banking and services, we've lost about 144,000 jobs over the past decade. So we're simply just outpaced by Denver, Houston, Charlotte, and many other of our peers, and I don't think that's the position that we want to be in. So our work and our research on how to be more economically competitive, focusing on our core strengths, we think will help us achieve more results in partnering with workforce organizations, with training organizations, and figuring out how we holistically address this challenge as a region. The DuPage County Board is a critical component of being involved in our regional economy conversations, and we know that, again, it's not one county versus the other. It really is, our region is an economic hub, and together we can achieve and stem the tide of these job losses. So lastly, one of the other core areas that we'll be focusing on is really making sure that our region is climate resilient. And so, not only does extreme weather bring disruption to our daily lives when there are big storm events, it takes out roads and infrastructure. But again, some of the more extreme weather that we see that may not impede our daily traffic really impedes the infrastructure and the sustainability of that infrastructure over time. So as we see more extreme events, freeze-thaw events, for example, and different changes into our winter climate, that's creating stress on our roads and on our bridges and on other utilities that are out there that we need to be able to address. So we also are doing some work on climate resilience. We've created a flooding susceptibility index. We've looked at where communities have higher instances of flooding or can predict that, and hopefully we can use that data to begin to invest proactively in strategies that will stem those investments or protect those investments. So, I know here in DuPage, one highlight of note that I just wanted to point out here is that you had a 15% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions from 2010 to 2015, the largest countywide decrease in the region. So I think that, that is a great thing to have happen, and we want to see that happen more. So we collect regional greenhouse gas inventory data, and we are working on how do we help our local governments and how do we help our counties begin to help reduce our emissions. So the link to that greenhouse gas emissions is also on that one pager that you have, but I hope I've piqued your interest in a number of the initiatives that we'll be taking on over the next several years, and look forward to working with you in DuPage County on successfully achieving our goals.
Fabulous. Yes, well, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Healy.
I just want to say thank you for everything you guys have done there. You've only been on a short time. You and Gordon have done a phenomenal job. I also want to thank you for looking at things creatively, such as the initiative by President Preckwinkle with Chairman Cronin and others, bringing the counties, the 7 county chairmen together into one group, looking at ways to increase the ability to look at us more as a regional effort, and understanding that when you have this type of business here and the part that funnels the product into it is all the way on the East Coast, sometimes it's easier to try and look at that group and bring them into DuPage or Cook or something like that, so that they're closer together and have that synergy. And I think it took creative looking at that, and I really want to thank you guys for that, and commend you, Chairman Cronin, along with President Preckwinkle and everybody for doing that, because that's the kind of out-of-the-box thinking we need to do in this area. And of course, thank you for everything you do on transportation.
Thank you.
Further questions? Well, thank you, Aaron, for the great job you do. CMAP's a great resource for us, so thank you for sharing your thoughts here today. Thank you, Gordon. All the best. Take care. Moving right along, I have a couple of remarks I'd like to share with you, if I may. On behalf of the entire county board, I want to offer condolences to the family of retired Judge Michael Wolf, who passed away suddenly last week. Mike Wolf was a dear friend of mine. We went to high school together, a classmate of mine. He was an exemplary jurist and a well-respected felony prosecutor with a long and successful career at the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office. Mike demonstrated professionalism, dedication, deep compassion for crime victims. He would go out of his way to get to know the crime victims and stay in touch with them and celebrate birthdays of a child that's no longer with us. And he was a remarkable guy, active volunteer with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, funny man, had a great sense of humor. At just 60 years old, Mike Wolf is gone far too soon and will be missed by his many friends and colleagues throughout the county. I think Rich Jorgensen indicated his respect for Mike. I think everybody on the campus knew Mike Wolf, and we will miss him. So he and his family are in our thoughts and prayers. Yeah. Finally, a reminder, after this meeting, we will have our annual ethics training. Ethics advisor Dan Hanlon is here. I saw him there earlier. He will be here to lead us in that program. Board members who have not completed the online training are urged to fulfill their ethics training requirement after today's county board meeting. So that concludes my remarks. That concludes the chairman's report. We move on to the order of business entitled Public Comment. We have quite a few folks seeking public comment, and we welcome all of you. We're delighted that you're here. We would ask, however, that you observe our rules, and so we've invited you here. We want to hear what you have to say, but we really ask that your individual remarks do not exceed 3 minutes in length. Try your best not to be redundant, but whatever you have to say, we're happy to listen to. And so the entire sum of all the remarks, according to our rules, shall not exceed 30 minutes. But in any event, we're glad you're here and we're happy to listen to you. So with that, we have first up Bruce Berkshire and Randy Rutledge from Roselle. And it says the subject is DCFG.
So I'm Bruce Berkshire from Roselle.
Randy Rutledge from Warrenville.
We're here representing the Illinois Target Archery Association. And 3 years ago, we had a mission to grow the sport of archery. And we were able to achieve that with the help of the DuPage County Fairgrounds. They allowed us to host our tournaments. We host 4 tournaments a year. We average 100 to 150 participants per tournament. There's usually about 60% of those are the kids. So without the support of the DuPage County Fairgrounds, we wouldn't be able to provide and offer that for that group of kids. We also have now, with the ability of the indoor and outdoor, we have a much wider area for our spectators to come. So we actually bring people from all around. We have archers coming from Iowa, Indiana, Missouri, Wisconsin, all of whom, when we have our multi-day state events, will go ahead and stay in this area, eat in this area, and contribute to the economic growth of the DuPage County. We also do a lot of what I'll say community give back. We actually have a group of archers from the inner city, the south side of Chicago, who actually bus their folks in to participate in our tournaments. I've actually seen them actually drive their bus over to the McDonald's to get the lunch and dinner, because many of the times our tournaments do go right around those and end of those times. So we're bringing those folks in who might not have an opportunity to participate in something. The sport of archery gives children an opportunity to do something other than what I'll call the big 4: basketball, baseball, football, soccer. And we also have now started to participate at the fair, and we offer free lessons and the opportunity for kids who might not ever had that chance to actually go ahead and try archery there. So with that, I really just wanted to kind of summarize that without the great facility and the staff that there is to support us, we wouldn't be able to, A, hit our mission of growing archery, and B, have a facility that will allow us to continue with our tournaments. So again, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board, for this time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Jim McGuire.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Board. Jim McGuire. I'm the executive manager of the DuPage County Fair Association. The county fair has been a part of DuPage County for more than 170 years. 65 years ago, the fair moved to its permanent home on Manchester Road. In 1958, the DuPage County Fair Association made an investment and completed construction of the Home Economics Building, the very first building built on the fairgrounds. The following year, in 1959, the association added the exhibition building, a few of the barns, and then continued with additional investments and improvements over the next few years. Currently, the fairgrounds and facilities host over 120 events annually, generating over 330,000 visitors to the fairgrounds and to DuPage County. Visitors come from all 50 states, Canada, and even Europe, resulting in over 4,000 hotel stays that we know of and have a very large economic impact locally. The DuPage Winter Tennis League has played tennis at the fairgrounds for 53 years. For over 4 decades, the fairgrounds has hosted the Midwest Train Show, Glenbard All-Breed Obedience Club, and the Wheaton 4th of July fireworks. Monroe Middle School has held the promotion ceremony at the fairgrounds for the past 25 years. Several other long-term events have enhanced community life in DuPage County as well. Many of the area nonprofits benefit from the fairgrounds and the support of the Fair Association. People's Resource Center, NAMI DuPage, DuPage Pads, Catholic Charities, Scarce, and Poised for Success highlight the list. The fairgrounds also supports many local government agencies, including the City of Wheaton, District 200, Wheaton Park District, Wheaton Fire and Police Departments, the DuPage County Sheriff's Department, Milton Township, and others. The DuPage County Fair Association takes great pride in supporting and serving the community. Our goal is to continue to grow, improve the facilities, and bring new opportunities to the community to enjoy. We thank the County Board for their continued support of the Fair Association, and as you all will be involved in helping making the decision of our future, we invite you all to stop by and learn more about the operations of the fairgrounds so that you're able to make that decision in a good manner. The fairgrounds, it's the place where community gathers. So I thank you for your time, and I look forward to your support. Have a great day.
Margie Pierre.
I need my glasses. So I'm Mark Allman, president of the DuPage Winter Tennis Club. And I'm Margie Pierce, past president and now vice president, putting the work on you. So we're both from Wheaton. We wanted to introduce you to the club quickly because we have played at the club for 53 years. We are a nonprofit social recreation organization. We have some members that are actually still playing that founded the group that far back. We play October 1st through May 31st. We have courts available when there's not another exhibit going on at fairgrounds from 6 to 11 at night, or 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., Monday through Thursday, and we also play on Friday mornings. Our membership ranges from 130 to 150 members, ranges from ages of 12 to over 90 years old. So we have a broad range of players. Members are from all over DuPage County. They're all walks of life. There are doctors, there's nurses, there's teachers, there's engineers, there's people that are in pizza restaurants, there's truck drivers, there's a wide raft of people that participate in the club. And there are also many senior members of the club, several in their 70s and their 80s.
Members younger than 18 have to be accompanied by an adult instructor or a paid member. We have junior players that are all working toward college scholarships, and it's been working out well for them. In the last couple of years, we've had kids go to University of Chicago, Navy, University of Illinois, Cornell, and many others on scholarships for tennis. And several of those families wouldn't have been able to continue in tennis if they didn't have the fairgrounds and the cost of the fairgrounds. And we have many players between the ages of 22 to 55 who work during the day, and they play mostly in the evening. And then the rest of the population is 55 to 90 who play during the day. And many of them are on fixed income and appreciate the opportunity to be able to continue to play tennis year-round. They wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for the fairgrounds. One group that stands out are our Thursday morning ladies. They're all in their upper 70s, lower 80s, and they're pretty darn good players. Don't tell them I said their ages. They sure don't look it. The club's open to all tennis players of all skill levels. We encourage new members. If anybody's looking to learn how to play tennis, we encourage that as well.
And I will tell you that since I've joined this club, it's an amazing facility. It's an amazing group of people. It's really a competitive advantage to a lot of people to live in this area because of this facility. You don't find this at other places. And it's a social group as well. You make a lot of friends. These people go out and eat lunch or whatever, dinner together. So it does provide an economic impact as well. It's an excellent health, recreational, and social outlet, for the residents, for our DuPage County residents at an affordable price. And that really is the differentiator. Many of the members that we have are senior citizens and are of lower incomes that can't afford, an expensive health club membership or whatever. And without the fairgrounds offering this facility for us to play, they wouldn't have another affordable place to play tennis. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity to present the club to you, and I thank the county board for having us here and listening to us, and we appreciate all your hard work for the county.
Thank you so much.
Marty Keller.
Mr. Chairman and board members, thank you. I won't ask you to raise your hand, but when you hear public safety, how many people immediately think of the DuPage County Fairgrounds? If you're part of the CERT program, you do. The Community Emergency Response Team, this is where we hold almost every one of our disaster drills as part of our training program. They've got all the room we need. They let us set up our bus crash scenes and our cars that are on fire and the smoke machines, and we've got wounded people all over the place. We couldn't do our job as well as we do without that facility. And so I'm here to tell you, whatever support you can give is greatly appreciated. You're making the community a safer place. The CERT program is developed by the Department of Homeland Security. It says for every one person who goes through that training, 10 people are better off. 10 people are safer than they were. So one person in a neighborhood makes a big difference. They know what to do ahead of time. They know what to do afterwards. They know how to shut off the gas and electric for your home so you don't become the torch in the neighborhood after the storm. We teach them those things. We practice them here. So we need that facility. We need whatever support you can give the County Fair Board so that they're going to take care of us and we can take care of you. And Dr. Jorgensen, I don't know if you're still here, I've got over 100 of our people trained in administering Narcan. So thank you all.
Christina DuPage.
Hello, I'm Christina DuPage. I'm the Senior Director of Programs at People's Resource Center. People's Resource Center responds to basic human needs, promotes dignity and justice, and creates a future of hope and opportunity for DuPage County residents. We make today better through our basic service programs, including our food pantry, our clothes closet, rental assistance. We make tomorrow better with our empowerment programs such as literacy, computer and jobs training, and art classes. And last year, we served nearly 25,000 DuPage County residents. It's because of over 2,700 volunteers and numerous community partnerships that we are able to impact so many lives. One special partnership that I want to highlight today is our long-standing work with the DuPage County Fair Association. For over 20 years, the Fair Association has donated 2 of its buildings for our Share the Spirit program. The Share the Spirit program is our annual holiday giving program that helps families provide gifts for their children during this special time of year. Because of the space that the fairgrounds provides us, PRC is able to organize the Share the Spirit program in a way that is comfortable and accessible for our clients. The space is donated to PRC, so we're able to use our resources to provide even more benefits to the families who look forward to this event each year. We arrange new toys, books, hats, and mittens in a way that allows our clients to shop for the items that will make the holiday season extra special for their children. We also offer free gift wrapping, and last year we served nearly 700 families, which means 1,858 children were reached. Over 130 volunteers offer their time, over 700 hours, and support during this 4-day event to make sure it's a success. The Fairgrounds has been a caring and supportive neighbor for PRC for over 20 years. We depend on their generous donation of space to help us reach so many people during the holiday season. We already have booked our dates for Share the Spirit 2020. The Fairgrounds is such a busy community hub, we need to make sure to book our dates well in advance. On behalf of Jennifer Fabian, our Executive Director at People's Resource Center, we want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the County Board for your continued support of the DuPage County Fair Association and the DuPage County Fairgrounds. This event means so much to so many families in DuPage County, and the Fairgrounds has become an important part of that tradition. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Aileman?
I spoke earlier with...
Oh, okay, good, thank you. Lori Itano?
Hi, my name is Lori Itano. I'm here speaking on a conditional use permit that was requested for a business that is located on Geneva Road near Pleasant Hill. I live 2 doors behind the little strip mall that's right there. The business that is interested in going in there is asking for a conditional use permit to put in a wine bar and video gaming or gambling machines there. And we have I assume, available to you petitions of over 100 people signing in the neighborhood in the area saying this is not an appropriate use for this. This is a small business area that backs right up to a large residential area within a quarter mile. There's a church, there's a school, there's a public park, and 281 residents. There is the only way out of our little part is to go right by that business. And we have a lot of families and a lot of children, including mine, who live right there. So it's not an appropriate use for that. There are many businesses that are outright permitted in that without a conditional use permit, and all of those would be great. The previous tenant was a clothes cleaner, and the parking there is an issue. With the cleaners, it was not an issue. You're in there for 5 minutes and right back out. But with a wine bar and video gaming, there would be a lot more parking that would be needed. There's very little parking right there, maybe 10 or 15 spots that are right there. And the overflow would have to go down the residential street. That would not be acceptable or, in my opinion, safe for all of us residents with our small children who live right there, right behind it. There is one small green area right next to the building that cannot be paved over for additional parking because it has a storm drain there, and obviously paving that would flood everybody behind. So, I would also point out the fact that surveys have been done of real estate immediately adjacent to areas with video gaming, and the property values do go down. So obviously that's a concern to the people who are there. So I appreciate your time and attention to this issue. I would say that that would be a business that would be great in a different area, not in this particular one. Thank you.
Thank you. Russ Whitaker?
Good morning. Russ Whitaker. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Rosenova and Whitaker in Naperville. Here this morning on behalf of Pulte Home Company as a contract purchaser of approximately 35 acres at Planters Palette in unincorporated DuPage County. We have a proposal up this morning for redevelopment of the Planters Palette property, or a portion of the Planters Palette property. We're proposing 84 homes on the site. We've been in this process for about 6 months and working cooperatively with staff to refine the project as it went along. Gone through multiple zoning board meetings, development committee, and I think at this point in time, coming out of development committee, we've sort of refined the project to the point we can with some conditions that were imposed on the project at development committee, moving from what is effectively an age-targeted development to an age-restricted development. Pulte has always looked at this project as targeting a demographic that is growing and is in need of new housing options in this county. As the county board well knows, our population is undergoing a massive transformation. By 2034, we will have more people over the age of 65 than we have under the age of 18. We're going to go from 49 million seniors to over 100 million seniors in the next 20, 30 years. There is a need to provide housing. DuPage County grew at a dramatic pace from 1910 through 2010. Every decade, DuPage County averaged 34% growth. In the last decade, DuPage County averaged 1% growth. In the last 3 years, DuPage County population has declined. If development is going to occur in the county, if we're going to sustain growth, development is going to have to occur in a very pointed fashion. That's exactly what this project represents. It represents very pointed development targeted at a demographic that is growing dramatically in the county and at a demographic that is not served with our existing housing stock. We built for aging families. I grew up in DuPage County, and I choose to raise my family now in DuPage County because it is a great place to raise a family. But we cannot continue to rely solely on growing families to sustain business in DuPage County. We're going to need to retain the demographics of aging seniors, and this is an opportunity to do that. It's an opportunity to meet a housing need that is dramatic in the county. So we think that by virtue of moving from an age-targeted subdivision to an age-restricted subdivision, we've stepped up, we've made a commitment towards that targeted population, and as Louis Abuna will speak about in a minute, by targeting that population or restricting the project to that population, the intensity of the development. Residents will talk about density, but I think intensity of the project is the key element. By virtue of an age restriction, we've created a unique element to this project, a unique element that will reduce the total population. It will reduce the impact on public services, water consumption, electric consumption, use of schools, use of parks, because there's simply fewer people in each unit, and as a result, it would also reduce the impact on transportation services. So with that, I ask that you follow the recommendation of the Development Committee from last week, which was a 5-1 vote to support the project and allow us to move forward with the project. Thank you.
Way Abuna? Sorry if I mispronounced it.
Good morning. My name is Louis Abuna. I'm a principal and a traffic engineer with KLOA. Our firm conducted a traffic study to look at the impact of the proposed Trillium Farm development. We conducted this study in conformance and coordination with the DuPage County Division of Transportation. We looked at the Purnell Road corridor and looked at the traffic issues related to the delays that are currently experienced from Gary's Mill Road to the north to Winfield Road to the south. Majority of the issues that are occurring now are primarily due to the cut-through traffic that occurs currently during the rush hour in the morning. Drivers going southbound on 59 using Purnell Road to get to Winfield Road, and then the reverse in the evening, commuters coming back during the rush hour traveling northbound on Winfield using Purnell Road to get back to 59. As a result, the intersection of Purnell and Winfield Road gets delayed in the morning because of the large volume of the cut-through traffic, and also because of the proximity of that intersection to the signal and Winfield and Mac, which, because of the queuing of traffic in the southbound direction on Winfield, prevents people from being able to turn right from Purnell onto Winfield Road. We made a number of recommendations in the traffic study to help address these issues and reduce the delay in the cut-through traffic in the area. One of them looked at turn restrictions in the morning from Gary's Mill Road to Purnell Road, so people do not cut through, and then the reverse in the evening and for left turns from northbound Winfield to Purnell Road, again to minimize the amount of cut-through traffic. These are implemented, the traffic on Purnell Road during the rush hour will be reduced between 50 and 60%, which will help alleviate the delays and the congestion that is occurring. We also made some traffic calming measures to help reduce the speed of traffic. One of them is the radar feedback speed limit sign, as well as some warning signs along Purnell Road for southbound traffic to watch out for the queuing of traffic at Winfield Road. Again, these are primarily to address existing conditions, which we believe will help mitigate the impact. As far as the development is concerned, in our traffic study, we looked at this as being a traditional single-family residential development, so the traffic generation would be higher than what would occur now that it's becoming an age-restricted. And even under that scenario, our analysis showed that the impact would be limited and it's not going to significantly alter the operations of the roadway network. When this becomes age-restricted, the amount of traffic coming out of this development, particularly during the rush hours, will be cut between 50 and 70%. So it's definitely going to further minimize the impact and reduce the traffic on the area roadways. Access to the development will be off Purnell Road. There'll be two access roads designed to accommodate the traffic going in and out of the subdivision adequately and safely. They're being positioned where the sidelines are going to be clear, meeting the standards required for the posted speed limit. So we tested those again, and we made that as part of our submittal to the DUDOT, DuPage County Division of Transportation, and in their review, they agreed with the design as well as the findings of our traffic study.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John Dusa.
John Dusa, Winfield Township Road District. I'm the Highway Commissioner. Good morning, Mr. Cronin and County Board members. As Highway Commissioner, my job is to maintain the roads that are under my jurisdiction in the unincorporated areas of Winfield Township. Purnell Road has an excessive traffic, especially in the morning, approximately, as Louis suggested, 6:30 to 9 in the mornings, and then 4 to 7 in the afternoons. Pulte Construction had paid them to do the study, and out of that came some very good ideas, but some were unrealistic. One of the suggestions that came out was the turn restrictions. That would greatly impede the residents who live in the immediate area to get to and from their houses, and it add excessive time to get home. One of the good suggestions...
It's far more persuasive when you don't clap after people speak.
There's also talk about, not to interrupt you, Chairman Cronin, sorry.
Oh, never interrupt.
I'm sorry. No. There's talk about posting radar units and flashing signs on Purnell Road. Those are great ideas to help calm the traffic. However, while restrictions may seem logical, they are not practical. Winfield Township does not pay for a dedicated sheriff's deputy to patrol township roads. With the current staffing, the sheriff has one deputy for our large geographic area, which includes 3 other townships. There realistically would not be anyone around to enforce the restrictions on a constant basis. The current LOS, the level of service for Purnell Road, is rated at an F. The road district budget is tight, as everybody else's budget is tight. There are no funds available to do road improvements other than resurfacing and general road maintenance. The road district does not have the funds nor the right-of-way to widen the road or put in sidewalks or paths. When the LOS declines, the traffic patterns cause delays and excessive intersection stacking of vehicles. The impact to the existing residents and new residents will be impacted with time lost to delays or lost time and money routing trips to avoidance of the intersection. Furthermore, IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation, is proposing to install a traffic signal at Illinois Route 59 and Illinois Garys Mill Road, which will have turn signals to direct more traffic onto a congested road. I believe this will greatly increase the amount of cut-through traffic on a road that cannot handle the traffic it has now. I would also like to mention that the Archdiocese of Joliet has 55 acres for sale, plus the potential for an additional 36 acres, which is known as the Old Mink Ranch. That is now a current little farmette that a couple owns, but has the potential to be sold for subdivision. Their only access is Purnell Road. So I would appreciate anything but a denial and a vote no for this Trillium Farms. Thank you.
You'd appreciate anything but a denial, just for the record. Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer Ludovici?
Vote no, please.
Okay.
We'll clear that up. Thank you, Chairman Cronin.
Yes, sir. Always looking out for my township guys. Jennifer Ludovici.
Hi there. I'm here today to express my grave concern regarding the traffic-related conditions that the Development Committee recently mandated as part of its recommendation for the zoning petition for Trillium Farm. The traffic improvements suggested by traffic engineer KLOA are designed, as Mr. Abuna indicated, to impede the flow of cut-through traffic on Purnell Road. Unfortunately, it's obvious that no consideration was given by KLOA to how these improvements would impact the existing homeowners who have no choice but to utilize Purnell Road to get to and from our homes every day. As one of these residents who will be directly impacted by these, I'd like to make sure that you understand what these solutions will mean to me and my few hundred neighbors. KLOA proposes mandating a no left turn from Winfield Road onto Purnell during the evening rush. While this may reduce westbound cut-through traffic during this time, it also penalizes those of us who have no choice but to utilize Purnell Road to access our homes. We will need to drive literally miles out of our way just to get home. For an easy comparison, to reach my home from the corner of Winfield Road and Mack Road, according to Google Maps, I could turn left onto Purnell to reach my home, and I'd need to travel 0.6 miles. It would take me about 1 minute. When this left turn is no longer available, I have two options. I can continue north on Winfield, turn left on Roosevelt Road, and then turn left on South Cantini Drive. That's a less safe left turn to make. There's no left turn lane for me to turn from. That will take me about 2.8 miles to travel, about 7 minutes. Or I could go left on Mack Road, right on Route 59, right on Garys Mill. That exacerbates traffic in front of Courier Elementary School, and then right on Purnell. That's about 4.5 miles, or about 8 minutes. In short, KLOA, or actually you, if you approve this plan, are asking us to drive 7 to 8 minutes, and that can very quickly turn into 15 to 20 minutes in bad traffic conditions, like the snow we're expecting later. And then when it should take just a minute or less for us to reach our homes. And that might not sound like a lot. 7 to 8 minutes doesn't sound like a big deal, but day after day, week after week, month after month, let's put it another way. It's an extra 30 minutes a week. It's an extra 26 hours a year. That's 26 hours a year. It doesn't sound like a little anymore. KLOA hasn't experienced a left turn lane closure at Winfield and Purnell before, but residents of this neighborhood have experienced it before. We went through this recently when the bridge at Winfield and Mack Road was under repair a few years ago. For several weeks it was closed, and drivers refused to drive those extra miles out of their way like KLOA thinks that we should. Instead, when the left turn was closed, drivers repeatedly drove a little bit farther north, and they made an illegal U-turn at the cemetery entrance that was just a little bit farther north. So before you approve that left lane turn closure, I'd urge you to please consult that cemetery business. It's the Assumption Catholic Cemetery, and confirm with them the safety issues that left turn closure situation caused at their entrance. These proposed solutions to calm the traffic are unreasonable for those of us who live off Purnell Road. It's unacceptable to allow Pulte Homes to build 84 homes, generating additional traffic volume on a road that cannot handle it, and as a condition for granting approval for it, blocking access to our homes 5 days a week. This is not progress. I'm dismayed by the recent approval by the Development Committee of this petition. The Zoning Board of Appeals determined that the petitioner's request does not meet any of the criteria of the 7 standards for conditional use, which is a requirement for approval of the Pulte's proposal. And mandating some very ill-considered traffic alterations and making it age restricted does not transform the proposal into satisfying the 7 standards. I urge you to please follow the lead of the Zoning Board of Appeals and reject this proposal. Thank you.
Okay, so just point of information, we're delighted that you're here and we want to hear from everyone. We have exceeded our time limitation that our rules provide, but we're going to continue to listen. Jennifer's remarks exceeded 3 minutes, so I just ask if you'd be mindful, try to be efficient with the word choices, and try not to be redundant. So next up is Cresty Malman? I'm sorry, I can't read the handwriting. Is that right? Forgive me if I mispronounce or I can't read the writing. No? Oh, there she is, okay.
I actually have to get back to work. I work at a utility company. I didn't know it was going to take so long. I'm going to ditto what the previous person just said. My name is Christy Mayman. I do live in the Winfield Township in Verdun. I'm a solutions person. I'm also a paralegal. I'm trying to understand the development. That's a good thing, but it's a bad thing when it affects where people live and the safety of the road as it exists today. In bad weather, I live with somebody who's handicapped. We have to go to the hospital a lot. I can't just take my life and route it around the hours of the left turn, and I can't get home. And I just think a solution would be, if you have it, you could go off of Roosevelt Road. It's more lanes of traffic, and Purnell is just one way each way. I mean, paramedics, fire trucks, police, they can't even get through if there's an accident. It's just bad. There's hills. A boy died last year there. I just think that there's solutions to every problem, and if you go off of Roosevelt Road, it'll take away all this traffic stuff on Purnell. So I ask each of you sitting in the seat, I know you don't live in the area, one of them, Sheila, does, our district, we need to look at the roads and the people that live there. We need to be able to get in and out, the older people that live there. And young people drive fast. So I really ask everyone that's sitting here today, if you know the area, we need to be able to get in and out when we need to, not just 4 to 7 or whatever the hours may be. So thank you very much for consideration of everything.
Oh, thank you. Those were very helpful, those remarks. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Jonathan Wiley. Jonathan Wiley, going once, going twice. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a pass out, whoever.
Where's Keith? He's not here, he's in the, thank you, sir. That's our official receiver.
So my name is Jonathan Wiley. I live at 1S671 Verdun Drive, and as you've heard, my only access to the outside world is Purnell. And I'm one of those old people, so it took me a few minutes to get up here. The DuPage zoning ordinance is very clear language, states that the granting of any conditional use is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this chapter and will not be injurious to the neighborhood, detrimental to the public welfare, or in conflict with the county's comprehensive plan for development. Nothing that they have proposed is in harmony with the existing neighborhood or in compliance with the county's comprehensive plan and is in fact injurious to the neighborhood. For example, Standard 3 of the zoning ordinance requires that the conditional use does not diminish the value of the land and the buildings in the vicinity of the proposed conditional use. The Pulte Group has not supplied any expert testimony or appraisal/marketing reports that confirms that the addition of the dense tract housing in an existing R2 zone community will not devalue the existing housing. The Trillium development is based on the densest single-family zoning allowed in West Chicago. Now, I would ask you to turn to the exhibit we've been passed out. While they have stated that they are building 2.4 units per acre, the visual reality is that they are building 5 units per acre in a tight cluster of 1,600 to 1,800 square foot homes, bookended by marsh, waste areas. By way of example, please see the exhibit you have before you, taken from the DuPage County parcel map. It shows 2 actual lots on Verdun Drive, and the fact that in order to get all these homes in with the space that can't be used, they're going to be compressed more than one might think. It shows that in each of these 1 acre lots, you could have 5 homes. And it shows the visual impact of putting 10 homes plus an access road on the area that's currently occupied by only 2 homes in the existing R2 zoning. High-density, repetitive tract housing will inevitably reduce the value of the adjacent communities on Burnell Road. Thank you, and please vote no.
Thank you. Vicki Weyer? Looks like W-E-Y-E-R.
I'm not speaking, but I am opposed to it, and I think that should be less dense and access off of Roosevelt Road if any development is ever considered. So vote no.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Joseph Sheehan.
Hi.
Doctor?
My name is Joe Sheen. I represent 28 West 531 Roosevelt Road and 28 West 461 Roosevelt Road. This is a 21-acre combined parcel that is immediately adjacent to the development. As part of the packet that you would have had in the agenda, on page 390, it shows that the property has been reduced with the landscape buffer from 25 feet to 0. The general bulk requirement between adjacent property is 25 feet. The southeast corner has also been set back from 30 feet to 15 feet. This is 0.5 and 0.6 in the exceptions that they're asking for. We would request that that be changed back to 25 feet so that these houses are not on top of our property. I would like to remind the county that these properties have generated over $2 million in property tax revenue during the period that we have owned them, which we feel that should allow us to maintain some element of privacy between this development and our property. We would also request that a physical privacy barrier be put up between that property and that, again, that the landscape buffer be maintained.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Al Garde, G-U-A-R-D-I, Garde?
I'm not a comment, I'm just saying vote no.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, sir. Mike Ludovici, you heard from your significant other, family member?
Excuse me?
There was somebody else here with the same last name.
Yeah, that was my wife.
Okay, great.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for this time, just to voice a couple concerns. After submitting letters upon letters and providing hours of testimony detailing valid concerns to the DuPage County Zoning Board of Appeals, which had the good sense not to approve the Trillium Farm petition, my neighbors and I are dismayed that all of these concerns and the concerns expressed by the ZBA were cast aside by the Development Committee. I strongly oppose the zoning variances requested by Pulte Homes for this proposed Trillium Farm development in unincorporated DuPage County for several reasons, including the following. Traffic congestion. The current development plan calls for only 4 points of ingress-egress on Purnell Road. An 84-home development would further increase the traffic volume along the road that is already exceeding its capacity. Among the problems, the traffic safety conducted on behalf of Pulte Homes predicts a 78% increase in wait times at the intersections of Purnell Road and Winfield Road, an intersection that already has a level service rating of F, which is the worst. Incompatible density. The zoning variances requested by Pulte Homes are not compatible with the neighboring residences. The single-family home lots off of Purnell, whether directly on or via Minor Road, are over an acre in size, and the R2 zoning calls for a minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet, just shy of an acre. Pulte would like to reduce this to 6,900 square feet, or 0.15 of an acre. This is a reduction in lot size of nearly 83%, a density not compatible with the neighboring residents along Purnell Road. Conflict with the 7 standards. The memorandum from the ZBA sent to the Development Committee cited that the fact that the petitioner's request does not meet any of the 7 standards of conditional use, which is supposed to be a requirement for approval of Pulte's request. The 7 standards of conditional use are in place to ensure development's responsibility consider factors including the impact of safety, traffic, and property values, among others. The Development Committee has not made Pulte's proposal compliant with the 7 standards simply by mandating a development be age-restricted and impeding access to Purnell Road for all neighboring homeowners. The Zoning Board of Appeals took the time to understand the many issues surrounding this proposal. They realized the development poses safety implications and the proposed traffic improvements were not realistic solutions. In fact, they would create new problems that would further negatively impact existing residents. Therefore, the ZBA overwhelmingly voted down the proposal. It is profoundly disappointing that the Development Committee seems to place little value in the recommendation of the ZBA. Perhaps if the Development Committee had heard the same hours of compelling testimony from concerned neighbors as the ZBA, they would have voted differently. I ask that you please reject the variances to the R2 zoning requested by Pulte Homes. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Elizabeth Smith, who's indicated on her form record of attendance only, but she's in opposition. Elizabeth Smith, it seems to indicate. We have Robert Wimbish, who wants to offer testimony. Robert Wimbish? Okay, thank you. Maybe we should move to... We'll get to Robert in just a second. How about if Barbara Whitney is here? Is Barbara here? We'll do Barbara, and then we'll come right back to Robert.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Whitney. At the February 18th Development Committee meeting, Russ Whitaker, the attorney representing Pulte Homes, while answering a question from a committee member about making the development age-restricted, went on to say that the development would represent a large amount in EAV. That's equalized assessed valuation. The mention of EAV was improper for at least 2 reasons. The subject of EAV had not been mentioned during ZBA hearings, and new information cannot be introduced before the Development Committee. More importantly, the subject of EAV of future developments is not appropriate for consideration in a zoning request. While the development committee members were undoubtedly fully aware that potential EAV of the development should not be considered in deciding a zoning variance request, it is disappointing that the chair did not say so for the benefit of members of the public who may not have known, as well as to inform Mr. Whitaker, who certainly should have known. Microphones were not used during the meeting, and Mr. Whitaker's words were not heard clearly by some attendees seated behind him. This, in some cases, led to a misunderstanding that he had referred to potential tax revenue rather than to EAV. I urge you to not permit the development to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Robert Wimbish?
Good morning and thank you. I was over in the holding room, so made my way over here as quickly as I could when my name was called. Thank you. To the members of the board, thank you for taking this additional time to hear our views on the proposed Trillium Farms project. Thank you very much. My name is Rob Wimbish. I'm a resident of Winfield. I live at 1S610 Verdun Drive. I've been a resident of Winfield and of DuPage County since 2014. For me, as I look at this project, and I will attempt to be brief and dispense with some of my notes here in the interest of time, as proposed, I see no way that this project wisely can be approved. As many have already said, the issues here deal primarily with impacts on traffic from my perspective. The condition on the roads from Purnell and its connections can be easily defined and accurately defined as abysmal and perverse. The lines of sight, the angles, the speeds, the conditions of the roads are simply not suitable for increased higher density development, and I'm not opposed to the higher density development. But I do think that if this county is going to consider this level of development, it has to look at the impacts upon the road and the road net, and what that is going to mean not only for the existing community, but for the individuals that Pulte intends to see buy these additional properties that would be installed. Simply put, I have heard and considered the types of traffic quieting measures that KLOA has advised, and others have already pointed out quite effectively that those measures are manifestly unenforceable and impractical. In short, even if you disregard the neighbors and the impacts that all of this has had on us, I'm not going to sit here and say that this project is going to result in a traffic apocalypse on Purnell. That's already happening. This will only make it worse, and that's unmistakable. So regardless of what you decide to do, if you fail to address the existing traffic problem as an overall solution to the issues that we all face, then I think you've taken a half measure. As currently proposed, I want to be very clear that I am not in favor of this project, and I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Okay. Ken Walker?
Here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and esteemed members of the board, particularly for giving us this overtime to continue to address our concerns in this matter. I'd like to address something differently, with a little bit of humor and perhaps supported by fact. As I totter up here to the lectern to speak on behalf of those who are 55 plus, I think it's a very slippery, chicanery move by Pulte to semantically fool the Development Commission and say that targeted demographic is different from restricted demographic. And where I find an unsupportable leap of logic is they want to ever so quickly shift the word 55 plus to insert the word senior. And there's a big difference there. So I stand in front of you at age 62. My wife is 55. We own and operate a business in downtown Chicago, which right now is not open because of the importance of our being here to speak to you on this matter of great importance to us. So we couldn't be more gainfully employed at age 61 and 55. But I'd like to support that with fact as well, because I heard something on the news not long ago, within the past few months, of, I do need glasses, but who amongst us doesn't? So the Census Bureau and the Bureau of Labor Statistics collaborate to publish a monthly report on demographic work trends. And in April of 2019, reported that the percentage of Americans aged 65 and older who are either active in the workforce or actively looking to be in the workforce had reached 20% for the first time since 1962. And double what it was in 1985. For age 55 and over, that number was 40%. That suggests to me that there are a whole bunch of us between the ages of 55 and 65 who are getting in our cars and driving to work every day. Ray Kroc got his big idea at age 54 and opened the first McDonald's at age 54 and worked there every day until his passing at age 81. And so what I'm saying is this leap of logic to jump from 55 plus to senior and start to semantically call it senior housing, I believe that slippery leap is suggesting they're going to build an assisted living facility where nobody has a car and nobody drives and nobody has a job. And that to me is semantical chicanery. Thank you very much.
Okay, good point. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Stephanie Erickson. Stephanie Erickson? You know what? I'm sorry. She made a notation here, record of appearance only. So we move on to John Jameson. He, as well, is not seeking to testify, but he wanted to let us know that he's opposed to this, record of appearance only. We have Sandy Jameson, who is against this development as well, record of appearance only. Lois Adams, Stop Trillium, she's pretty clear, she's opposed to this, record of appearance only. Bob Pastine, record of appearance only as well. I'm assuming that maybe that's an opponent, but it doesn't specifically say that. Record of attendance only from Clayton Adams, Stop Trillium, so that's pretty clear. Colleen Fournier, she wants to seeking to offer some testimony. Please proceed, Colleen.
Good morning. Thank you for your time today. And I live at Purnell and Verdun on Ardennes Court in a cul-de-sac. And like the previous gentleman, I am too senior and took off work today to be able to be here and talk to the group, as is my husband and all of the population that's over 55. So that is definitely a false logic that they're using. I wanted to touch on a couple items that have not been talked about before. Again, we talked about the KLOA study that the board required, and some of the statistics, 886 additional trips on Purnell a day, and that's a 17% increase over the current statistic of 5,250, which is an IDOT statistic from 2016. And so the peak day turn in traffic at that intersection of Purnell and Winfield currently operates at a D. It's going to drop that down to a level of E. And I think it was mentioned previously that the traffic going eastbound on Purnell towards Winfield is going to increase by 25% with an estimated 78% by 2025. That is simply unrealistic for the residents who live there. Not only did we get the lessons today about the MapQuest and how many miles, but the extra time and delays and just sitting in traffic. And what I see time and time again on that little two-lane road with no shoulders is cars deciding to get out of the traffic jam, do a U-turn, which is at great risk, and head down towards the Gary Mills and Route 59, past the Courier School. We're looking at potentially adding, even if you took half of that towards the Courier School, we're looking at increasing danger to the children, and that cannot be overlooked. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention. We've talked about the calming measures, but I think that for most of us, the most important thing is the property values are going to decrease with inability to be able to get to our properties. And I think that's really important to all of us. It's a great place to live. We are all here. I moved from Naperville because of traffic. And so it's disheartening to hear that we are considering a measure that already is, we've got traffic today, and that we're continuing to look to this. So we really urge you not to approve this project until correct proper measures can be seen for ingress and egress from Roosevelt Road. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. We have Linda McCabe here, record of attendance only, opposed to Trillium. We have William, I'm sorry, K. Okay. Right, like a doctor writes. Like a
Two items, and it'll be a little bit different and refreshing, hopefully. My name is Bill Kovacs. I've lived here 30 years. I'm a retired investment lawyer. I used to write the sort of loan agreements to finance this sort of project. I have two comments to make. I'm also a dedicated volunteer on the Winfield Planning and Zoning Commission for over 20 years. It's a public service that I give back. Your Planning and Zoning Board thoroughly studied this issue and came up with a recommendation. If the board undermines the work of the dedicated people who serve on commissions like that, you're not going to be able to recruit quality people to do that kind of public service. So my first point is, I urge you to respect the recommendations made by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Secondly, Pulte is ranked 312 on the Fortune 500. Its gross revenues last year were $10.19 billion. So working from their public financial statements, it looks like they're expecting a gross marginal revenue from this project of about $33.6 million. At their published margin of 23.8%, there should be a $7,996,000 profit. There's plenty of money in this project to fix the road issue. The markets are working. This should not be presented to you as a take-it-or-leave-it proposal. Now that the market studies by Pulte indicate development is marketable in this area, if you reject this, I'm absolutely certain you'll see another proposal that will be better for the community. This is a classic case of external costs. The cost of doing the road access reduces the margin on the project, but it is still attractive to this developer or another one. So I urge you to kick it back to be reworked. Thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you. Eileen Kelly, record of attendance only. Doesn't indicate her position, just the subject opposed. Okay. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Vanessa Lopatka, record of attendance only. Doesn't indicate her position, just the subject matter, but I'm assuming she's opposed to it. If she wants to come back in here and clarify that, we'll be here for a little bit. Bob Erickson is a record of attendance only. I can't say that they're opposed to it because it doesn't say specifically on this form. It says the subject matter, but it doesn't. Bob doesn't indicate his position. We have Monica Wiley, who has there she is, record of attendance only.
Opposed, and it should be noted that my husband and I are both in our 70s, and we use that inlet and out every day.
Very good. Thank you. We have Eileen, looks like Belskin, Belokin. Forgive me. The O looks like an S. Your record of attendance only, you're opposed to the development. Okay. Timothy Alchin. He's here to, looks like Allchin. Okay. When Timothy's coming and getting ready to testify, maybe I can plow through some of these. Tom Vertheen, he says very clearly, vote no, record of attendance only. Lawrence Ingram, he is opposed, record of attendance only. We have Jill Cody, record of attendance only. She is opposed, right there in the front row. Thank you. Shirley Daly wants to offer some testimony. So Shirley, why don't we, was it Tim? Okay, Shirley and then Timothy.
Hello, I'm Shirley Daly. Thank you for letting me speak.
Sure.
My first paragraph echoes what many people have said, that the ZBA did indeed cite the fact that the petitioner did not meet any of the 7 standards for conditional use, and the opposition to the turning restrictions. What I want to emphasize in my comment then is that for the last 40 years at least, the access to this parcel, the former Planters Pallet, has been via Roosevelt Road. Why should it not remain so? Roosevelt Road is built to easily handle the increase in traffic this development would generate, whereas Purnell, being a rural 2-lane road with hills which obscure lines of sight and no shoulders, definitely is not. This question has been raised to the petitioner on more than one occasion, beginning in October of 2019, but has always been sidestepped. Consider a resident of a 55-plus community waiting for emergency services when seconds matter, but the ambulance is slowed down on a 2-lane road with no shoulders, so is unable to get around traffic. Roosevelt Road would better serve potential residents' needs. Consider the expensive repairs that will be needed to our fragile country roads, Gary's Mill and Purnell, due to heavy construction equipment. Roosevelt Road is designed to withstand that load. Yesterday, in an online discussion, there was much cynicism expressed that this government body would choose the financial interests of a corporation over the well-being of its constituents. I ask that you prove to these voters that you do in fact wish to serve their needs and respect your own zoning laws. I ask that you remove the ill-conceived condition imposing a left turn restriction from Winfield onto Purnell, and that more careful consideration be given to effective solutions. I request that you deny this conditional use due to the fact that it is 3 times the existing density allowed in R2 zoning, thus lowering our property values, and because of the projected 886 cars per day that would be added to an already overtaxed country road. I ask that because of the reasons I have stated and the history of the property, you recognize that any development of this parcel should be served by Roosevelt Road. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Timothy.
My name is Tim Alchin. I live at 1 South 710 Winfield Road on the corner of Winfield and Purnell, the northwest corner. So I've lived there for 16 years and have seen the massive increase in traffic on Purnell. One of the things that we've gotten well acquainted with is the crunch of cars coming together. It's a distinct sound that I can hear inside my home. Every time it snows on Winfield Road, there is accidents in front of my house. I've gotten used to that. Tragically, late at night, I've also gotten used to hearing more significant accidents. Multiple times I've gone out to that intersection and stood with people as they've waited for ambulances while they're in cars that are completely demolished. The speeds along both Purnell and Winfield Road lead to some pretty significant accidents. The intersection is not a safe intersection. As a parent who's soon to have a teenage driver, it's a serious concern for me as to how a 16-year-old son is going to navigate that intersection. We have access off of Winfield Road, and we also have a driveway to Purnell, but it is clearly an intersection that cannot be stressed any greater. The traffic calming measures in the past, when there's been turn restrictions, people turn into our driveways. So there's 3 or 4 driveways that are on the west side of Purnell. People will turn into our driveways and they will back out onto Winfield, and then they will make a right turn onto Purnell. That's what I expect will happen if you put in time restrictions during those times, is that the neighbors, there's 5 homes with driveways all to the west, are all going to experience people turning into our driveways and backing out. Seeing as I have 2 kids who often are playing outside, that would not be something that I would consider a safe situation. The last thing I want to address is this. In 16 years, I've never seen any patrol car on Purnell pulling over anyone for any traffic violation ever. I've never seen anybody being issued a citation. I've never seen anybody being given a ticket. I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen. I'm sure the sheriff could prove that occasionally it does. But I can say, as a resident of 16 years who regularly uses Purnell to access 59, I can tell you that it's not really workable to look at turn restrictions and say that the DuPage sheriff is going to have the ability to enforce those. That's not believable to any of the residents there, given the current state of the DuPage County sheriff and their ability to cover the land. I'm not throwing shade on the DuPage County sheriff. Like, I think they do a good job overall. I want to make that clear. We're not upset with the DuPage County sheriff, but I don't think it's realistic for them to be enforcing road restrictions on one road only. So we'd ask you to oppose the development for the sake of the families that live. It's a great place for your family to live, to enjoy the forest preserves, to enjoy the country setting. I grew up in eastern Pennsylvania, where what attracted me to this area was the hills and the trees and the beautiful scenery. But we need a better solution than what Pulte Homes has provided. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We have Frank Schoenborn, record of attendance only on this subject matter. We have Georgianne Leo seeking to provide testimony on the subject matter. Georgianne?
I live on Lakewood Tours with my husband Ken Walker, Mr. Chicanery, and I just want to echo all the sentiments that everyone else has said so eloquently, and I vehemently oppose.
Thank you very much. We have Gibb and Carol Van Pine. Opposed. Record of attendance only. Thank you. Wayne Kunze. Yes. Wayne, please.
Westwind Homeowners Association has been asking for several years to have increased traffic enforcement on Purnell Road, particularly regarding speeding and improper passing. That enforcement has not happened. The only action we have seen is the periodic use of the automatic speed measuring trailer with no associated enforcement action. Traffic congestion on or near Purnell Road is exacerbated by through traffic routed by such software as GPS and Google Maps. With the Development Committee's recommendation to implement the KLOA traffic study's quick fix of prohibiting right turns from Gary's Mill onto Purnell during the morning rush hour and prohibiting the left turns from Winfield Road onto Purnell during the evening rush hour, we can expect there will be no more enforcement action than has recently been the case. We suspect that the lack of enforcement action along Purnell is because without shoulders, there is no place to stop an offender other than in the right-of-way. This presents severe safety issues, particularly for the law enforcement officers involved, making them uninterested in enforcing traffic regulations along Purnell Road. The quick fix to the Purnell Road traffic volume problem recommended in the petitioner's KLOA traffic study and currently recommended by the Development Committee makes no provision for local residents who have no way to access their homes other than by use of Purnell Road. Although I am a senior citizen, I often travel from my house to the outside world throughout the day. My home on Lakewood Court is within sight of the corner of Purnell and Winfield Roads. Prohibiting my ability to turn left from Winfield would force me to travel north to Roosevelt Road, west on Roosevelt, south on Catini, and finally east on Purnell to Lakewood. That's about a 5-mile trip. I would encounter 3 left turns, 2 unprotected by left turn lanes, and be subject to swift moving traffic. I would only be one of many area residents forced to perform these convoluted maneuvers just to get home. Would the board members like to come home within only a few yards of their house and then have to drive an additional 4 to 5 dangerous miles to arrive there? Thank you.
Thank you. Rose?
Yes, good morning.
My name is Rose Kunze, and I live on Blakewood Court, just 1 block west of the Purnell Road, Winfield Road intersection. Why has the most obvious solution never been addressed? Planters Pallet has always had Roosevelt Road access. Purnell Road never. Why not use Roosevelt Road instead of already failing Purnell? It's there. Use it. Are you aware of the parallel between the Polo Club subdivision in Naperville and the Trillium Farm subdivision in Winfield? Both involve roads with current excessive traffic congestion and multiple safety issues. Naperville voted correctly to table the issue until traffic problems were resolved. The same should be done regarding Trillium Farm. Will the county be held liable when injurious or fatal accidents occur along Purnell Road and Garys Mill Road, or when a young Courier Elementary School student is harmed? Do you know that at the ZBA recommendation meeting, one board member said he wouldn't be able to sleep nights if he thought his vote had caused anyone to be killed? Do you feel the same way? Are you curious why the ZBA would emphatically deny the Trillium petition when the Development Committee would do the exact opposite and approve it? Are you aware that every ZBA member acknowledged the traffic problems and safety issues that already exist on Purnell Road and its surrounding intersections? A fellow Winfield resident calls the Winfield Road-Purnell Road intersection Kamikaze Corner. Do you really believe it wise to add even the smallest amount of traffic to this already grade F and unsafe road? Why would you think that way? Is the county so greedy for tax revenue that it is willing to ignore its own 7 standards, its current R2 zoning restrictions, and the safety of its constituents? What do you think is more important, revenues or safety? Do you believe the petitioner's attorney when he states that lack of housing is the primary reason homeowners are leaving DuPage County and the state of Illinois? Are you kidding me? Are you aware that the petitioner's Loretto Club development in desirable Wheaton has sold only 13 of their 48 lots since 2017, and that only 11 homes have been built, while the other lots remain with temporary fencing, pools of standing water, and mud? If the need for housing is so great, why are Loretto Club sales languishing? Do you think 84 $400,000 plus homes at the end of failed Purnell Road and surrounded by dangerous intersections will sell better than Loretto Club? Do you believe that adding the condition of age restriction is going to generate less traffic? Do you believe that people over the age of 55 drive less or don't drive during peak hours? Are you aware that Trillium offers no amenities and that their green space is limited to buffer plantings and water detention ponds, neither of which is usable by residents? Are you aware that no public transportation or convenient shopping is available unless you drive there? Have you seriously evaluated the traffic calming recommendations in the KLOA traffic study? How can they even be implemented or enforced? Will the county assume the costs? And where will the money come from? Have you considered how no-turn lanes will adversely affect residents who live on or off of Purnell Road? How much farther and longer we will need to drive just to get to and from our homes? Increased time on the road only increases our chances of being in an accident. The county's strategic plan mandates the county board to keep people safe. Do you really care about the safety of your constituents? If yes, how will you vote? One final question. Why didn't the chicken cross Purnell Road? Because it didn't want to end up a dead duck. With all respect, this is neither a game of 20 questions and certainly not a joke to us. This is our David versus Goliath moment. Who do you stand with?
Okay. Paul Fullerton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board members. My name is Paul Fullerton. I live at 1 South 611 Verdun. If you know Purnell Road, traveling west on Purnell from Winfield Road, there's a cul-de-sac. First cul-de-sac on the right has about 6 homes. Second street on the left. Second street on the left is Verdun. That is a cul-de-sac area, only access is to Purnell. That has 35 homes. I live in that area. The next, going west, is Lorraine Street, also only access to Purnell, cul-de-sac area, 22 homes. The only other access is across the street. Across Purnell, you could get on Cantini and get all the way up to Roosevelt Road. There's 108 homes in that area, and that has access to Roosevelt Road. If you know Purnell, it's a country road. There are no shoulders. It's 2 lanes. It's 40 miles an hour, and everybody travels about 50 or plus. I heard from Pulte stating that with the age restriction, for some reason anybody over 55 isn't going to work anymore or not going to drive. But they're going to build homes with 2-car garages, so I assume everybody's going to have 2 cars. 84 homes, 2 cars, that's another 168 cars. I'm not opposed to this development. I think it's too dense, but I'm not opposed to it. It needs to have access to Roosevelt Road. Why it doesn't, I can only assume it's a cost factor. But I'll echo the comments here. For safety reasons, fire, ambulance, coming down Purnell to get to where all these old people are going to live. I'm one of these old people. I'm 61. They need to come in from Roosevelt Road. It's a 4-lane highway. The only access to our area from Roosevelt Road is through Cantini Drive. The last thing I'll say is the Zoning Board of Appeals had 4 meetings. They were long meetings. I attended only one of them. And after 4 meetings, they voted no. Then the Development Committee, for some reason, votes yes, overturning the Zoning Board of Appeals. I don't really know why that is. I don't have any information on that. It makes no sense. The only way this development could actually go through, it needs to have access to Roosevelt Road. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Mary Kay Rybarski.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you for all you do to make the county a wonderful place that it is, and I'm here to ask you to do one more thing. I'm here to ask you to come to a great party. My husband and I are parents to a daughter who is a resident at the care center across the street. She suffered a cardiac arrest in college and has a severe anoxic brain injury. So we've been at the center for quite a few years, and we've learned an awful lot about that center. We've learned that despite very tight budgets, but despite probably not very good salaries for our nurses and doctors and CNAs, they are wonderful. Our regular staff is so competent and so caring, and we have a wonderful resource across the street that I know you support, and I'm going to ask you to support in another way. My husband and I, after a number of years, finally got to the point where we weren't shell-shocked anymore, and we decided we could do something. And so we know that the Care Center Foundation is the fundraising arm which makes a daily difference in the lives of all the residents and people who live there. As you know, about 300 people are residents of the center, and a great deal of them, probably 80%, are now reduced to Medicaid funds. So that brings a very tight budget, as I know you know. Despite that, we think it's a very fine facility, and I know that everyone does the very best they can. As I said, we think that the fundraising arm, the Care Center Foundation, could possibly make just a little more difference, that we could help that. And we decided that we were going to throw a ball. So we have invited all of you, and we're continuing to invite all of you to attend, to support us in that endeavor. The foundation does have a terrific fall festival. It has a wonderful golf outing. But we think this is another avenue, and it could create a good revenue source, in the few years. As my husband and I have attended my private schools ball, I've seen they're raking in an awful lot of money every year. And so we decided we had to do this. This was something we had to try. So I have brochures for you. I hope that you will read them. I hope that you will support us in every way you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last but not least, we have George Piotrowski.
Yeah, my name is George Petrowski. I've been here at DuPage since 1985, so that'd be about 35 years. And when I moved out here, I moved out specifically because it's R2, and basically all the people in the West Wind Association live on R2 properties. This zoning variation is not in keeping with that amount, and that's why I'm opposed. I also think it's somewhat suspicious that Pulte didn't buy the part of Trillium Farms that's right on Roosevelt Road. Probably it's a cost factor, which is why it's suspicious. That means they're really not interested in the safety of the community. And somehow also don't understand how 55 or over can be enforced. If the people buy the homes and they die or they leave their property to their children, then it's no longer 55. What do you do? Evict the people that bought the new properties? Anyway, I'm opposed to it basically because it goes against the R2 restrictions that have been enforced in here for at least 50 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our public comment. I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break, if we may, please, and we can reconvene here in a moment, okay? Thank you very much. We'll be right back here in 5 minutes, please. Come back to the boardroom. Yeah, I know. A little punchki goes a long way. Okay. Mr. Connor. All right, looks like we've got pretty much everybody back here. Why don't we just, for the record, call a roll? We took a 5-minute recess. I feel much better now. So, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chaplin. Covert. Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff. Elliott. Hart. Healy. Krajewski. Larson. Noonan. Ozog. Pachalski. Renahan. Rutledge. Selman. Tornatori. Zay.
Okay, great. We have a quorum. So we concluded our public comment. We move on to the order of business entitled consent. It's been a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Zay. Chaplin. Covert. Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff. Elliott. Hart. Healy. Krajewski. Larson. Noonan. Ozog. Pachalski. Renahan. Rutledge. Selman. Tornatori.
Okay, thank you. On to the order of finance, Mr. Bob Larson.
Approval of FAR 6120 is scrivener's error to placing names on payroll.
Been a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Larson.
Aye.
Noonan. Ozog. Pachalski. Renahan. Rutledge. Selman. Tornatori. Zay. Chaplin. Covert. Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff. Elliott. Hart. Healy. Krajewski.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Approval of FAR 6520, acceptance and appropriation of additional funding for the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Workforce Investment and Opportunity Grant.
Leave is granted. Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move FIR 6620 for the income eligible retrofits program for fiscal year 20.
Leave is granted. Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move approval of FIR 7520, placing names on payroll.
Leave is granted. Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move approval of FIR 7620, authorization transfer funds to the Motor Fuel Tax Fund Company.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have a couple of members that came in. I don't know if we need to reflect that.
Yeah, so for the record, I know Mr. Elliott joined us, Member Covert joined us, Mr. Healy joined us. I think that's pretty much it. Am I correct? As long as they're on the roll call, they were on the original roll call, and they're on the attendance roll call, I think we're fine. So, yeah, thank you for your concern. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then, finally, then I would move approval of FIR 7720, transfer of funds to the local gasoline tax fund company in the amount of $266,000.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then move approval of FIR 7820, budget transfers to various companies and accounting units.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then move approval of change order amendment to the resolution for a contract issued to Lehner Mutual Limited to provide professional legal services for tort liability.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finally, I move approval of CBR 6320, approval of a contract to MGT of America for a study of the consolidation of the DuPage Clerk's Office and Recorder's Office.
Okay. So there's been a motion and a second and a request for a roll call, which is always in order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. Oh, forgive me. I'm sorry. You're seeking recognition. Please proceed.
Thank you. I would ask that this board be more fiscally conservative and not leap at the chance to spend $32,600 of taxpayer money. When we discussed consolidating the recorder's office into the clerk's office back in October, I said that we, as elected officials in our community, didn't need a referendum on the ballot to make this decision. Our electorate voted for us to make these decisions. That was our referendum. I pointed out that in Illinois, 87 out of 102 counties have already merged their recorder's office and their county clerk's office, so we do not need to reinvent the wheel at taxpayers' expense and pay for a new study at a cost to taxpayers of $32,600. I said that I believe in smaller government, which this consolidation would have achieved, and yet after several of us made those points, this body voted to kick the can down the road with regard to consolidating these offices. This body voted to put this question on the November ballot, asking voters to decide this question and relinquishing our fiduciary responsibilities. That was not my choice, but that was the board's will. So now we're asked to approve spending of a $32,600 taxpayer money on this feasibility study. I'll be voting no on spending this money for this study until after voters decide this question in November. We've asked voters to decide in November, and now we're asking for a study right now. I say wait until after the voters decide. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion, Member Covert, followed by Mr. Pachalski, followed by Member Chaplin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe in smart consolidation for my constituents in District 5, and also we're a steward of taxpayer dollars as well. I agree. However, we cannot go into this consolidation process blindfolded, and I will not let that happen because it could have disastrous effects on my district, and I think it's responsible, and it's responsible to have a study and fully know what we're getting into before we consolidate. And I would like to be more transparent through the county board and let my constituents know that in District 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pachalski.
I read the Winnebago study, and that said, well, if you had a high volume of court filings, it might be smart to keep the Recorder of Deeds office. That study also said that it was good to have a study. Now, I don't know enough about the clerk's office. I don't know enough about the Recorder of Deeds office to automatically say what cost efficiencies or what could possibly be done. You're going to consolidate. You're going to lose an office holder and a deputy, but the day-to-day operations and where we can save more money and what is smart for the taxpayer makes sense, because I'm not an expert in this. And just because we want to consolidate doesn't mean we can't have some guidance as to what really is going to give the taxpayer bang for their bucks and cost efficiency.
Thank you. Member Chaplin.
Thank you, Chairman Cronin. So I, too, read the Winnebago
study. And in fact, the Winnebago study is a really great study that was done in October of 2013. According to the proposal, the county wants to study potential benefits, cost savings, efficiencies, and improve outcomes. So if you look at the Winnebago study, the study tells us that few counties have tracked the results of consolidation to confirm how much savings were realized, especially whether the savings of eliminating one position led to cost increases or tangible reductions of services elsewhere. I mean, it goes on to talk about, the cost savings. So we can look to this study to show it's answering that question for us. Also, we're asking about tracking success of consolidation. Well, the Winnebago study talks about tracking the success. It says counties have generally done little to track success of consolidation other than totaling the decrease in personnel expenses and monitoring for customer complaints and other visible problems. There are some complicating factors that make tracking the financial success of consolidation difficult. Most counties that have consolidated did so while also cutting staff in response to post-recession drops in volume and revenue, making it hard to isolate direct benefits of consolidation. So it goes on to talk about that. Also, I believe the study in their proposal, they say they want to study counties of DeKalb, McLean, and several of them, but Winnebago's already studied those counties. We have all the information on those counties in the Winnebago study. If you read the study, all the information is there. So I look at this study as a duplication of the Winnebago study. And I don't, we talk about duplication of services. Do we need to do a duplication of a study? Can we maybe scope down this MGT study? Maybe make it a little less in scope because we can take a lot of it from this and maybe come back with a reduced price in that aspect. But merging, it says, they said only one county actually is merging the clerks and recorder's office into one space. In reality, counties are consolidating offices, they're consolidating elected officials. And that's kind of what I thought was going to go on here. Generally, the two offices are being still run as they were consolidated, as before consolidation, just with one elected official in charge instead of two. And I think that's been the norm, and I think that's going to be what's going to happen. So I think we have a lot of really good information here in the Winnebago study that really addresses a lot of the questions that are proposed in the MGT study. So like I said, maybe let's go back and look at the scope, see where we can take from the Winnebago study and maybe reduce our costs by maybe even half.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Member Desart.
Yeah, I think you're missing my point. The point is that I was just refreshing what happened back in October, that this board decided to go to referendum and ask the voters their opinion about merging the offices. The referendum, we wanted it in March, but this board decided to move the referendum to November, and that referendum will say, should this body merge the two offices, the recorder's office with the clerk's office? And because we're asking voters to decide this, I'm just saying a $32,600 study from now through May is premature. Why do a feasibility study now when we're asking voters in November if we should even do this? We should do the study then after November once we hear from the voters. If the voters say no, do not merge, then we're wasting $32,600. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm trying to keep track of everybody that was seeking recognition in order. We have Mr. Larson, followed by Mr. Krajewski, followed by Mr. Healy, Mr. Zay, Mr. Hart. Member Covert. Renahan. Everybody will get a chance, I promise.
I've been to Winnebago County many times. I like Winnebago County. I have friends in Winnebago County.
Frank Haney.
Last time I checked, and I'm pretty sure about this, we are not Winnebago County. We are DuPage County. I'm pretty sure about that. I checked the maps. We keep hearing of this issue that we've rushed this consolidation and we kick the can down the road and we ask the voters to decide. We don't have a choice in that matter. We can't consolidate two constitutional offices. That's a thing. We have to do it by referendum. But the same people that are saying we should have done this sooner, so that we merged the offices earlier, had no problem with, we just heard a couple weeks ago from the clerk's office that the difficult transition of the election commission into the clerk's office was so stressful that we had to hand out $100,000 in bonuses to those members of the clerk's staff last year to do this. But we don't want to even have a study to look at this issue before we give it to the voters. Do you think the voters who are going to make this choice might want a little bit of information about what this transition is going to look like? Or should we just say, hey, we're going to do this thing, figure it out for yourselves, and then we'll figure out how to make it work? The reason you do studies is so that you can provide information to us and to our voters regarding making this important decision. It's not a decision that should be rushed. And oh, by the way, we keep hearing this false narrative that 87 counties have merged their offices. It is patently untrue. Most of the counties in this state have never had and could not legally have a separate clerk and recorder. So when we say 87 counties have merged their offices, that is false.
Further discussion. Do you remember who I said? Jim Healy.
Well, first off, we moved it from November, from the primary to November, so we wouldn't disenfranchise about 200,000 voters. So that was the first thing. Second thing is, the Winnebago study is great, but you and I both know the folks in Winnebago, and I deal with them constantly. The treasurer of the state association is the auditor of Winnebago. And as he always says, DuPage is different, DuPage is different, DuPage is different on everything we talk about. So the final thing is that this study really looks to do two things. First of all, we get an answer on will it save money and how it would be implemented. And we can give that to the voters prior to the election so that they know what they're voting on, what is being said on how, whether it would save money, how it would save money, etc. The second thing is that it would be a guide map, a road map to how they would then, after the election, merge the two offices so that it was done as seamlessly as possible, so we didn't have a lot of people stressed out and we would actually be able to move into a thing. So those are the important things looked at. Winnebago study was great, but again, there's a huge difference between Winnebago at 300,000 and DuPage at $1 million.
Mr. Krajewski.
Real quick, and I probably should know this referendum we approved for November, was it, Connor, was that advisory or binding?
Binding.
It's binding?
It's
Okay,
binding.
that's fine. But, so, the voters are going to decide, this is to pick up on what Member Dessart said, voters are going to decide in November, yes or no. If this study comes back and says we're going to save a bunch of money, and the voters vote the other way, or they come and say it's not going to save us money, and the voters vote to consolidate. We'll pay money for a study that's going to go the opposite way. And as far as scaling it back, if some of this is going to be how you're going to merge the two offices, that should be probably done after we know that they are going to be merged and the voters have spoken in November. Again, it seems like we've already made the decision, let the voters decide. So the only purpose I see for this, if we do it, is to educate the voters, if they can't be educated by all the stuff that's out there now between counties, and we can do that ourselves. So it seems like we've already made the decision to let the voters decide in November.
Okay, I'm going to call on Member Renahan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Member Dessart, Member Krajewski. I think it's really helpful to look at kind of how studies have been used in the county. And I did have the opportunity to read the study on the merger of the clerk and the election commission prior to that going through. And it was largely a regurgitation of the DuPage County website. It was a lot of interviews with staff as to what they do and how they do it. And it really was anything but a how-to of how to be able to do it. And so I think common sense just tells me that, to put this off would be, we could really, use the money toward a study as to how to do this, whether, instead of whether we should do it, because we did agree the voters would decide.
Okay, further discussion, Mr. Zay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems like we talked about this a lot. Remember, I wasn't on the side of either. I don't think we should consolidate the office because Recorder of Deeds is the holder of the land records for the county of DuPage. When we talk about Winnebago County, it's a third of our size. But the bigger thing is they're a tenth of our size in assessed value. We're $52 billion worth of property here in DuPage County. That's a lot. I think spending $32,000 to see if this merger is even good is a way to do it. Most of us, our most important, we are people here today, what's the most important thing they have? Their house. And we're not going to spend $32,000 to see if this study even makes sense, to get rid of one elected official? I want to make sure that if we do this merger, our land records are going to be safe. We talk about people that come in and steal Social Security numbers and do all this other stuff. There's so many scams out there. How do we know that this is even the right thing to do, but spending a minimum of $32,000 on a study that's different than Winnebago County, that's got, again, a third of our population, a tenth of our assessed value? You shouldn't do it. Winnebago is a different thing. We're a different county. $32,000 is worth it to protect our land records.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zay. Member Covert?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make 3 points, agreeing with Member Zay, that Winnebago County is totally different from DuPage County. We are the second largest county here in Illinois. And second of all, we talk about transparency all the time. Transparency, which means providing information to constituents. And by not having a study, we're not being transparent. They don't even know what they're voting on in the referendum in November. So that's really important to have those studies done beforehand to inform the public of what they're going to be voting on. And third, the same board member who proposed this of not having a study is the same board member who said that having a complete count committee for the census was premature. So I'm not convinced. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hart.
I don't have too much to add. I think most of the members covered most of the topics on this issue. Frankly, I think we covered most of the topics on this issue when we debated it a couple months ago. To me, and I think to many of the folks on this board, the question is, are we going to save money? That's the question that we need to know as board members. That's also the questions that the voters deserve to know. We need to see if what we're going to take in terms of an action is going to result in less taxpayer money being spent. So for that reason, like I said a couple months ago, like many of us said a couple months ago, I think the study is necessary. We need to have data to back up our decisions. I think the voters would appreciate the same data. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion. I'm going to call Mr. Tornatore, just because he hasn't spoken once yet. Mr. Tornatore.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps this vote took place when I was recovering from my leg, but did this board vote to have this on the ballot in November? Yes. So that's a done deal.
Not necessarily.
Well, okay, because I've asked 3 people and no one knows. So now I'm hearing you saying not necessarily and other people saying yes. So I don't know. I guess my point is, if it's going to be on the ballot, then I'm not sure what the study is going to do. It's not going to change anybody's mind. If it's not going to be on the ballot and we're going to have a study to help us decide whether to put it on the ballot, then I think it makes some sense. So someone needs to tell me whether or not this is on the ballot as I stand here or it's not. Because if it is, then I'm going to vote against the study.
We passed a resolution to put the question on the ballot, the November ballot, because there was a proposal to put it on the March ballot, which wasn't pleasing to the majority of the members on the board, so we moved it to November. Meanwhile, we're studying whether or not it's even a question that should be put to the voters, in my opinion. So, but that's, I don't think, the deadline to put questions on the November ballot is when? August?
Later this summer. I believe it's mid-August. I'd have to.
Yeah, we did. Of course we did. We take votes all the time on things here.
So this board still has to vote.
No, we voted.
That's correct. That's correct. We did vote to put a binding referendum question on the November ballot. That's what we did.
But that vote's not binding, is what we're saying.
No, it is.
We can change the vote. Okay, so it's not a binding vote. I mean, if we can reconsider.
It was binding. It was binding. Okay. But you know what? We want information from people that study it to see if we can save money. Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't going to speak, but I find this debate puzzling as I did last time when we had this debate. From my perspective, it's very simple. Data, good. Absence of data, bad. Data, good. We have one study from a primarily rural county with a third of our population and a tenth of our assessed value from 7 years ago. That doesn't seem like a really great single data point for us as a county to use in making a huge decision. This board needs to get as much information as we can to make a decision. We may, Member Tornatore, we may want to reconsider our decision to send it to the voters. I have no idea what the study is going to say. I'd be surprised if I voted to reconsider, because that's generally, I don't reconsider things. I think it should go to voters. But let's find out. And our voters need to have a data point. Our voters need to be informed as to what the consequences of this are going to be. And I am completely puzzled by the attitude of some of the members of this board that seem to feel like the best thing to do is keep everybody in the dark. Let's avoid discovering information. Please, let's get the information. It's going to be good, bad, or neutral, but we'll be better armed than we are now. And our voters are going to be better armed than they are now to make a really important decision in November. So let's support this. Thank you.
Further discussion, Member Rutledge, followed by Member Chaplin.
Chairman, I don't think anybody is suggesting that we put this issue in the lap of the voters without any data. But we do have our elected county clerk and our elected recorder's office heads that could put together reports that we could put forth to the voters to make a reasonable decision on this and use that money after that voting decision has been made, whether we merge those two departments together, then use the study at that point and spend the money at that point to make the best recommendation for how to move those. If the voters decide to put those two departments together, spend the money then to decide the best way forward. I don't think that any of us here are suggesting that we let the voters go off to the voting booth in November and willy-nilly make that recommendation without any input. I think we're a far better entity than that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Member Chaplin.
Thank you, Chairman. So I don't know if any of the board members read the proposal in the packet. I don't know why you're perplexed, because this survey that they want to do, first of all, Winnebago County didn't do the study. They hired a firm called RPG, I believe, to do their study. It is a very good study if you look at it. The MGT that's going to do our study, the MGT members have worked with county clerks and recorders in several counties that have recently or are in the process of merging these offices, including DeKalb County, who has a population of about 307,000, Madison County, who has a population of about 267,000, McHenry County, who has a population of 307,000, and McLean County, who has a population of 173,000. They're not even studying Cook County, who is the largest county that is going to be merging. So if you read the proposal, you'll see the counties that they're going to study. And what I'm saying is that the McHenry study, if you look at the McHenry County study, they touch upon all of those counties. So every county that is in this proposal from MGT, Winnebago did the study in 2017. Winnebago said, we want to know cost savings. I'd say get it from our financial people here. We want to know about, this study also says they're going to go about looking at the what the staffing levels are in each department and maybe have to reclassify. Every week, every couple of weeks, in our packet, we get placing name on payrolls, which has job reclassifications, promotions, equity adjustments. You're telling me we need to hire somebody to tell our staff and our elected officials how to do that? There are some good things to this study. I think Sam, Member Tornatore is right, and Member Desart is right, and Member Krajewski. Once the voters decide, if they decide that they want to merge, then let's do a study on how to do the merger. But we don't, and you look in the proposal, they're going to interview, like Member Renahan said, they're going to interview staff. In fact, they want to hire a point. They're going to have a point person. The county is to appoint a county person that's going to be their daily liaison to set up meetings with staff members to talk about staff. It just seems kind of right now that we don't need it. I mean, if we look at the Winnebago study, and I'm not talking about Winnebago County, I'm talking about the really very good, a very informative study that they put together. And you look at the proposal from MGT, it's a duplication. That's what I'm saying, and that's what I want this board to look at. And I think if, you're puzzled or perplexed, I don't understand. You don't want duplication of services. I don't want duplication of services either. So that's my point. And thank you very much.
Member Desart, you were seeking recognition.
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore, I'm a little frustrated here because back in October, we voted to put a binding referendum on the ballot to ask voters whether or not they were going to they wanted to consolidate the recorder's office with the clerk's office. And now we're saying that no, back in October we voted, we're vacillating now. Now we're saying back in October we voted to maybe kind of think about maybe putting this on as a referendum. No, we voted on it. Member Tornatori, we did vote on it. I don't know why other people are saying we didn't vote on it because we voted on putting this referendum on the ballot in November. So therefore, we should not spend this money until after the voters tell us what to do. Now, it's frustrating to me that you guys are now vacillating on what was voted on in October. Thank you. Let's call the vote.
We have other people that would like to share their thoughts too. Mr. Zay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think when we voted on to do the binding resolution or referendum, we also, in that resolution, said we would do a study, if I'm not mistaken. So we're just following the resolution that we voted for that said, yes, we're going to put it on the ballot, but we're also going to do a study to see if it makes sense. So we're just following the resolution that we passed. This is not something that came out of the dark that we just decided to do. This is following the resolution that was passed to merge the two offices on the referendum issue. So we're just following it. Just isn't somebody just put it on there. It was part of the resolution that was passed was to do a study.
Okay. Anyone else seeking recognition? Ooh. Okay, seeing none, hearing none, we have a motion and a second, and we have a request for a roll call. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Larson. Aye. Noonan.
Aye.
Ozog.
No.
Pachowski.
Aye.
Renahan.
No.
Rutledge.
No.
Selman. Tornatori.
No.
Zay.
Aye.
Chaplin.
No.
Covert.
Aye.
Desart.
No.
DeCiani. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Elliott.
Aye.
Hart.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Krajewski.
No.
9 voting aye, 7 voting nay. The resolution is adopted. Okay, thank you. That concludes our business on that order. On finance, I believe, yes, finance. On to the order, no, on that was, yes, we move on to the order of development. Mr. Sam Tornatore.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Under committee update, I have a few things to say regarding the development committee, and if I can move forward, particularly after the lengthy public comment of this morning. I won't comment on the issue that's going to be before us in a moment. I'll save that for later. But I did hear words about the development committee, that people were dismayed and the development committee cast aside certain things and gave little value to the ZBA, and someone said what we did made no sense. Someone said that the chairman, was me, allowed testimony in which shouldn't have been allowed. A number of things which concern me, and maybe I'm being a bit paternal, but I'm going to go ahead anyhow. And for those people who aren't aware, not necessarily the board, maybe get you to understand what the development committee is supposed to do. It's a recommending body. It takes a look at what happened at the Zoning Board of Appeals and then makes a recommendation to this board. But the development committee looks at building and zoning petitions from a bit of a different perspective, maybe a perspective of 30,000 feet, a fresh set of eyes, as elected officials, which the Zoning Board of Appeals are not. We look at it from a county perspective, not merely the nuts and bolts of a zoning, planning and zoning petition. We have an opportunity to look at the text of the ZBA, and then between the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing and the development committee, we get to ask questions. We get to view the property. We get to talk among each other. We get to ask staff. And what we get to do at the development committee is something that the Zoning Board of Appeals doesn't do. which is to make changes to the petition, to add conditions or remove them. Many times, the petition that comes to the Development Committee is not the same petition that leaves the Development Committee. The Development Committee is probably the only committee that deals with residents person to person. And many times we have to make decisions which aren't terribly popular. And while I appreciate the passion and everything that everyone said this morning, I am concerned when safety of people are brought up as if the Development Committee doesn't care about safety or doesn't care about homeowners, because we do, or we wouldn't have spent the time that we did doing what we did. I respect what the Zoning Board of Appeals did. And what the Zoning Board of Appeals did still stands. We didn't overturn the Zoning Board of Appeals. We simply came to a different conclusion based on the facts. And our recommendation is what comes to this board, not what the Zoning Appeals does. Zoning Board of Appeals sends it to the Development Committee, and we make the recommendation, we being the Development Committee here. The Zoning Board of Appeals is what it is, and the Development Committee is not a rubber stamp. This is not the first time the Development Committee has ever deviated from the Zoning Board of Appeals decision, and it probably won't be the last. I just wanted to say that I'm very proud, and I commend my committee for taking the stand that it did on this issue and other issues, sometimes in the face of some people who might not have been terribly happy with the decision. And I hope that that continues, and I hope that what goes on today doesn't alter or change the independence that the Development Committee continues. That's my committee report, Mr. Chairman. For what it's worth, and at this point, I move to approve DCO 23-20. This is ordinance Z22, ZOW. This was moved to approve a conditional use for a Class C restaurant. The Zoning Board of Appeals voted to deny, as well as the Development Committee.
It's been a motion and a second.
Just to be correct, this motion was made in the affirmative, so if you're against it, vote no.
So I need to make sure I understand. If you vote yes, you were voting for the use that both the ZBA and the Development Committee said no to.
That is correct.
Yes means no.
No means no. Yes means yes.
Okay. All right, so for the record, we want to make sure it's perfectly clear. There's been a motion and a second on this item, DCO 0023-20. Been a motion. Mr. Tornatore moved. Who seconded? Did I see? Member Rutledge seconded. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Tornatore.
No.
Zay. No. Chaplin. No. Covert. No. Desart.
No.
DeCiani. Eckhoff. No. Elliott.
No.
Hart.
No.
Healy.
No.
Krajewski.
No.
Larson.
No.
Noonan.
No.
Ozog.
No.
Pachalski.
No.
Renahan. No. Rutledge.
No.
Selman.
Okay, it's pretty clear. There are none voting aye, 16 voting nay. The resolution fails.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to approve DCO 21-20, ordinance Z1962, Trillion Companies resolution to approve a variety of conditional uses to reduce lot sizes, reduce lot size width, front yard setbacks, corner side setbacks, and rear yard setbacks. And before we get into it, Mr. Chairman, there have been some questions that have been asked of me as to whether or not this requires a supermajority. It does not.
Okay, so we're on item DCO 0021-20. Member Tornatore has introduced the resolution, described it. It's been a motion by Mr. Tornatore. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Krajewski has seconded it. Discussion. I see Mr. Larson seeking recognition for purposes of discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These are always challenging issues that we face when we deal with these development issues, and I do have the utmost respect for the chairman of our development committee. I know they take their time to consider these appropriately. I do disagree with the chairman on this particular issue. When somebody comes before this county asking for a zoning variance, a change to our plan of how we run the property that's under our jurisdiction, it is their burden to prove why we should grant that. It is not for the residents to disprove anything. And this proposal does not comply with the ordinance. The ZBA found every single one of the criteria they failed to prove their case for a variance. This is something that is just going to be patently unfair to the residents. And in 9 years on the board, I've never seen, in all the time we've had some fairly controversial development issues, I've never seen a reaction by the residents like I've seen for this one. They're the people who are going to have to live with the consequences of this. And I've met with some of the residents on this issue. They are not anti-development. We talked about the fact that there would be ways to make this work, but the way it's being proposed by the developer is not the right way, it's not the fair way, and this is not just a not in my backyard issue, it's a fundamental fairness for the residents. That road is a traffic nightmare, and asking the residents to deal with that issue by saying, well, we're going to deny you the right to turn into your own subdivision so that we can help control traffic is simply patently unfair. I've been on that road, I can't even tell you how many times. I take my beagles over to the little dog park over there, and it is really bad. There's a school there, it is an undeveloped road, and this is going to make the situation much worse. This is a proposal that is too dense. It is designed to maximize profit and not to maximize compliance with our zoning guidelines. And the fact that it could have had an opportunity to access Roosevelt Road but chose not to, that's on the petitioner, not on the residents. So one point I did want to address, because we heard a lot about this, which was, well, we're going to solve this problem by saying that we'll make it subject to the Housing for Older Persons Act. So I just wanted to read the relevant provision of that act so everybody's aware of actually what restriction we're placing here. This doesn't say, well, now everybody there has to be 55 and older. It says at least 80% of the occupied units are occupied by at least one person who is 55 years of age or older. Guess what? I fit into that 55 or older criteria. So if you have one person, and they could have many children, they could have all kinds of things. These are houses that are being built with 2- and 3-car garages. So to suggest that suddenly this is going to be a bunch of poor old seniors who aren't going to move around a lot is really silly, and it's a misrepresentation of what's going on here. The petitioner had the obligation to prove this would not harm the area and the existing residents who have lived there for so long, and every criterion I've seen, they have not met that burden. And certainly asking them to take on an additional problem by saying they can't turn into their own subdivision at certain times doesn't do anything but make it worse for them. So I'm going to be voting no.
Okay, further discussion, Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chairman. Along with Member Larson, I probably am the most familiar board member for this particular road. I probably over the last 3 years have averaged at least a dozen times down that road every day. In 2017, I used to live just east on Butterfield Road. We renovated a house in West Chicago. That was my mode of getting there. And you can imagine how many trips you make when you're renovating a house. So I know that property very well. I know that if I were driving down that road and somebody crossed over into my lane, I'd have no choice but to go in the ditch. And that cannot be safe. I would never expect somebody to take their lives in their hands by walking a dog or riding a bike down that road. The traffic is just too dense for that. I will say that because of the safety of that road, I can't in good conscience vote for this project, because if something were to happen on that road, I would feel responsible for making the decision that allowed the traffic increases. I could support this project. I am sensitive to the tax needs in this county, and that those areas are going to get developed, but the ingress egress has to go out to Roosevelt Road, because it would take care of all of the issues that we're talking about today. Let's see, the other concern I would have is if we were to allow this development to go in and out on Purnell Road, there are undeveloped parcels already along Purnell that would make for a problem, it would greatly diminish the value of those properties just by the traffic alone. Member Krajewski spoke this morning about overweight vehicles, and Mr. Duza from Winfield Township talked about the maintenance of that road, and I'm listening to the concerns of the people that are going to talk about the heavy machinery that's going to need to come down the road and take care of that. The last point I want to make is to the residents. I spent several hours last night reading your emails on this project. I take all of your concerns to heart. But I also want to say that instead of fighting the development that keeps trying to come into your community, I know that there are at least 4 projects that have tried to come into that community that you have fought against. Use your considerable lobbying to lobby the state, the township, whoever it is you need to get through to fix that road. Because you cannot continue to stop the development that is going to come to that area, add to our tax rolls, and lessen your burden for taxes as well. So I will be voting no on this, but again, I'd like to see your considerable talents, because you've been very vocal about this, to go to fix the road. Let's go to where the problem is. Thank you, everybody.
Member Desart, followed by Member Zay, followed by Member Krajewski.
First, I want to say I respect the work of Chairman Tornatore and the work of the Development Committee. I came into this meeting today a firm no, to vote no for this. And then I was talking to other board members about other possible development that might go in there instead of homes, and it could be much, much worse. Who knows what could go in there. But I know the area very well. I don't know if Tim Alchin is still here, but I probably turned around a couple of times in your driveway once because I was right there on the corner looking for another house.
That's what it was.
But I would, listening to everything I've heard this morning in the meeting and outside of the meeting, I think we should move to table this issue until some of the traffic issues are resolved, like that Roosevelt Road ingress egress. So I would like this body to put the brakes on this just for a minute until we figure out some of the traffic concerns. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Member Zay.
Second. Shouldn't make a motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, as I said, I've been fortunate to be here over 20 years now, and I've seen many of these people on many developments. So I do take offense to when you're saying it's about tax revenue, because I was here when we voted against Resurrection Church because you didn't want it in your neighborhood. And when you didn't want the forest preserve put in the maintenance facility. And when we had problems with Naomi's house for housing sex trafficking women that was trying to get out. Again, things are going to happen. Purnell's a bad road no matter what. And no matter what happens today, I'm going to make sure something gets done there. And that might be changing those, because that road has been bad for a long time. We know, I've talked to the highway commissioner about that big dip. I mean, I've been there so many times. That's tough, and I respect it. But again, to say it's about tax revenue, it's not, because we've denied a church that's non-taxable. We did a maintenance facility you guys were against that, again, was non-taxable. A home for sex trafficking victims, again, it just seems like nothing's going to happen. And we're hearing that, the highway commissioner said, there's more parcels there. 55 acres from the Archdiocese, 36 other acres. So something's going to happen. It's going to be. It just can't be. It doesn't look like our house and it's not the same size, that we're not going to do it. So again, I respect what you're saying. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of your support. I'm not going to support this, but this has got to do, like Ms. Rutledge said, we got to start working for better ways, because development is coming in that area, and it just can't always be a no all the time. I mean, I heard it because the church bells are going to ring, and I heard because of this. It's just not because it's in my backyard. Things are changing, the county's changing, demographics are changing, senior housing is a must. But we got to work in our best efforts to try to get Purnell changed, because development's going to happen, and I have a feeling if a developer comes in one of these other parcels, we're going to hear the same thing. It's not about tax revenue, it's about development and what's best for the area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion, Member Krajewski.
Yeah, I don't know if Paul's still here, or maybe this is for Connor, but you back there hiding, Paul? Or Connor? But this project here, because the zoning board denied it, It's not a variance request, correct? Because we would need a supermajority if it was a variance request.
That's correct. Conditional use
So
only.
it's a conditional use, okay. So they are not asking for variances. It's a conditional use, hence why only a simple majority.
That's correct.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, further discussion, Member Desart.
I just want to say, I agree with what Member Zave said, but these are $400,000 and $500,000 homes, right? So they're not, it's not senior living by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, Member Chaplin.
Thank you, Chairman Cronin. So,
I'm not a senior, I'm only 52.
Mr. Haas, could you address some of the traffic issues and the calming traffic enhancements that are going to go on Purnell Road with this project?
Sure.
And will it help the neighborhood, or is it going to, how is that all going to work?
Well, the KLA traffic study that was done was relative to the existing traffic on Purnell Road. And the KLA traffic study that was performed and the traffic calming measures and some of the other recommendations that were performed by, or suggested by KLA were to deal with the existing traffic conditions. Those existing conditions, traffic calming measures would include putting sign restrictions during AM and PM peak traffic times. That would be generally between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning hours and 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. in the evening hours at various locations on Purnell Road and Garys Mill Road, and also Winfield Road and Purnell Road. That would limit cross cut-through traffic from Winfield Road and also cross cut-through traffic from 59 from getting on Purnell Road. So effectively, the only people that could use Purnell Road during those peak times would be the people that have access directly to Purnell Road. And the traffic study indicated that those measures, along with some additional signage, flashing signs indicating that you need to slow down, and then also some signage relative to speed limits, would reduce speeds on that roadway and also reduce the cut-through traffic on that roadway during peak times.
Can I just follow
Sure.
up on that, please? So thank you. So my understanding of the area is that it's the cut-through traffic that is causing the congestion and not necessarily the homeowners. Is that correct?
That was indicated by the traffic study.
That was indicated by the traffic study. Okay, so, and how many how many different homes are there right now? How many homes are, do you know how many homes are out that way right now, or?
There are approximately 85 homes that only have access to Purnell Road to get to Winfield Road and Garys Mill Road and points beyond.
Okay, and then all the others just cut through, so that's the issue with the cut through.
The issue is the cut-through traffic, and that was based on the traffic study done by KLOA.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion. Somebody was seeking recognition here. Anyone else? Mr. Healy?
I just wanted to say that in my neighborhood, we have unfortunately, the city of Naperville passed a development that was on 1/10 the number of acres as this, and was roughly 3 times the number of units. So I'm going to vote in favor of this because, as everybody else has said around here, this is going to be developed. The rest of these parcels are going to be developed. You're going to want to try and get decent zoning where you have at least lot sizes that are doing it. But we had to face, and we are now facing, something that is on 1/10 the size and is 3 times the number of units. And that's something you don't want. And that's something we got shoved down our throats. So I'm going to be voting in favor. I hope that they listen to the residents. I think you can put the left-hand turn off of 59 and keep that out of it. But as for the left-hand turn off of Winfield, I think you should actually keep that in the evening because, as we all know, traffic is more stretched out in the evening than in the morning rush hour. That would at least alleviate some of the concerns on this.
Okay, is there anyone else seeking recognition? Member Eckhoff.
I just had a few questions for Paul. We've heard a lot of talk about whether or not there could be an access for the subdivision out to Roosevelt Road. It's my understanding the current proposed subdivision doesn't have any property that could be used to exit onto Roosevelt Road, correct?
That's correct.
But there's additional property to the north of it, of the subject property, that abuts Roosevelt Road?
There is property that is adjacent to this property that abuts Roosevelt Road, but this property owner has no rights to that property, no
Well, I
access
understand,
rights.
but they could acquire that property and then put entrance and exit in there.
They could acquire the property that would give them access, or that would give them frontage on Roosevelt Road, but there's also a concern as to whether IDOT would even grant that access on Roosevelt Road.
That was my next question, is even if they acquired it, no matter how far west it was, could it be, because Woods of Cantini is right down the road to the east, and they don't have a light, but could they just have an entranceway without a light, the farther west, if they acquired the property?
One of the issues with potentially acquiring that property that has frontage on Roosevelt Road is getting access on Roosevelt Road. Roosevelt Road is a limited access highway, so that's problematic.
So they'd have to get a curb cut authorization from IDOT.
That's correct. And in addition, that particular property that we're talking about that has frontage on Roosevelt Road is very close to a very difficult intersection, Gary's Mill Road and Roosevelt Road, that's very problematic.
If you go east.
Correct. And it's a troubled intersection as it is, so IDOT has been loath to grant any additional access on Roosevelt Road, particularly at this location.
And do you know what the starting price for these houses are supposed to be?
I believe they're around $400,000 at the lower price point.
Because I was Googling, somebody brought up Laredo.
$400,000 at the lower price point.
And I was Googling Laredo Club or whatever it's called over in Wheaton, and that starting price is about $519, $520, so that could be a reason why those aren't selling them. They think this one would. This is a conditional use which seeks to change what is currently zoned R2, 40,000 square foot lots, into about 7,800 square foot lots through the conditional use without a zoning change, correct?
Yes.
And my problem with that is we've got zoning laws so that people, when they move into property, know what their property next to them is zoned. And they can expect that that zoning is going to be followed, or the petitioner is going to have to come forward and make a justification for the change in zoning. And too often I see petitioners coming forward and using a conditional use, which with a planned unit development, and if anybody's been down Roosevelt Road and you know where Denate is, that was a big planned unit development for Wheaton about 25 years ago. So you go down Roosevelt Road, on both sides you got commercial. Then you have multifamily, then you have residential, because you planned it all with multiple uses, but one parcel. But here, we're coming in, we're changing, effectively changing the zoning without changing the zone. It goes from R2 to R4. And I just don't think that's proper. I think the petitioner needs to make the justification for the zoning change on its face to change the zoning as it is currently listed with the county and stand on the merits of that instead of constantly coming in on a single parcel and using a conditional use to get around the variance requirements that otherwise they'd have to deal with. But I'm proud that a number of people on this county board are telling the residents the same thing I was going to say is, change is coming. Something's going to go in here, and you better be used to it. In that Purnell Road, I drive up and down that. I drive up and down Gary's Mill. I live right across the street here at the fairgrounds, and when people come in and say, well, I don't have enough money to, maintain the roads, and at some point you got to say, find the money. And that's something that you should expect if you're using that road. You need to go to the people and say, I'll pay a little bit more in taxes if that's what it takes to get that road fixed so it's safe. And you should go to them and say that. But I'm going to vote against this today.
Further discussion, Member Ozok.
Excuse me, Mr. Haas, quick question. Right there in front of that entrance to Cantini, just to clarify, there is not a specified designated left turn lane. Is that correct? Do you think I don't think there's a designated, is it 4 lanes there?
Heading westbound on Roosevelt Road, there is a designated left turn lane to get onto Gary's Mill Road.
To get onto Gary's Mill?
That's correct.
But there is not a designated lane, for instance, the entrance to Cantini would be west or east of Gary's Mill?
The entrance to Cantini is
development.
Is east,
is
yes.
East, right.
And there is no left turn lane to get into the woods of Cantini.
That's what I was looking for.
That's correct.
At that location?
That location,
okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion, Member Desart.
Motion to table this until some of our questions are answered and there's more research done on the traffic issues.
I noted your remarks before, and it's been seconded. Okay, so would this be a motion to table to a date certain, did you say, or indefinitely?
March 10th? Sure, March 10th.
Okay.
Is that enough time to get, I'm sorry, is that enough time to get more research done on the traffic situation? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Mr. Larson, are you speaking to the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
And I respect the concept behind that. My concern is I don't know that it's appropriate here because we've been told for years that we're supposed to consider the record that was developed before the ZBA. Tabling it would only be for the purpose of developing additional information that apparently wasn't considered by the ZBA because we do have that entire record before us. So I don't know, and I respect your position on this, that I always like more information, but procedurally, I'm not sure moving this down the road accomplishes anything other than inviting us to gather information we shouldn't be having. If it's to be kicked back to the ZBA for further consideration, that would be one thing, but for us to just table it would be problematic.
Yeah. Discussion on the motion, Member Rutledge.
Yes. I think there are still too many questions that need to be answered from the traffic calming issue. Who will, our Winfield Township Highway Commissioner has already said there aren't any sheriffs that are going to be policing that. So how would that look? And then one of the suggestions that came on the emails that you sent last night was maybe we should take into consideration moving the stoplight from Mack Road to Purnell because of the explosion of cut-through traffic on that, and then put Mack Road as a stop sign, and I thought that was actually a good suggestion. We'd still need to know if IDOT would even allow an exit from the development out onto Roosevelt Road. So for me, that is the deal breaker for me, is that it has to go out to Roosevelt Road, and if we don't know that that would be possible, I think that we should table this for now.
Highly unlikely that we'll know that information in 2 weeks from now. So, I mean, if you are there's a number of ways to get to where you want to go. If you've chosen to go down this path, that's your prerogative, but Member Larson certainly has a valid viewpoint here. Further discussion. Member Elliott.
Yes, I'm sensitive to the point that Member Larson raised, and I wonder if we could ask our state's attorney, or if not you, the appropriate person. Is that true that we are limited to the record that was developed by the ZBA?
It's my recollection of zoning law that you are limited to the scope of the inquiry conducted by the ZBA. If this body wants to take more time to consider the ZBA record, then that is certainly appropriate. But you're limited to the facts found by the ZBA process. When you go beyond that scope, you run into issues and concerns.
Member Tornatore.
I'm hesitant to disagree with our state's attorney, but I also believe that we can take into consideration what the development committee added to the record that the Zoning Board of Appeals presented.
That's a very good point, because you're going through the conditional use process and additional conditions were applied. So if you're limiting your focus to the conditions, that's another thing to take into account. It's a very complex process at this point because a lot of moving parts have come into play.
Further discussion, Member Covert.
I believe I'm on the development committee, and at the last development committee, there was a motion, an amended motion that was proposed by Member Chaplin and seconded by me, saying that the developers would work with, would work with the constituents and the township in developing safety measures, and they were going to follow proper procedures in making sure that they would improve the traffic conditions and road conditions there. So I just want to clarify that discussion was had at the last meeting.
Okay.
So
Further discussion, Member Chaplin.
Just clarification, the motion was to take the recommendations from the traffic study and implement and make that a condition of the, so that was what the motion was, to take the recommendations of the traffic study and make that a condition of the approval.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else seeking recognition? Discussion on the purposes of the motion? Mr. State's Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, just for purposes of procedure here, if the motion to table fails, then we would go to a motion do pass, seconded, motion and seconded, and we would have an up or down vote.
Motion
Right,
to
at that
table is
point.
resolved first. If it's,
We do
if
the motion to table
fails,
first.
then it
That
motion
will
to pass.
continue, if it prevails, then we'll put this issue off for 2 weeks. If it fails, then we go to the underlying motion do pass, seconded, and if it passes, then fine. If it doesn't pass, then it doesn't pass. Okay, so just make sure everybody understands. With that, there's been a motion and a second on a motion to table. Just to table, yeah. Think about what your objectives are here. Yeah, can't be more clear than that. So, there's been a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Desart. Aye. DeCiani, Eckhoff. Elliott. Hart. Healy.
No.
Krajewski.
No.
Larson.
No.
Noonan.
Aye.
Ozog.
No.
Pachowski. Renahan. Rutledge. Selman, Tornatore.
No.
Zay.
No.
Chaplin. Covert.
Okay, so the motion received 5 voting aye, 11 voting nay. The motion to table fails. So now we will entertain a motion on the underlying resolution. Is that your pleasure, Mr. Tornatore?
Are we done with discussion? Because
Well,
I'm ready to close when
Okay,
everyone
okay,
else
so
done.
is there a motion on the DCO 0021-20? Okay, fine, just want to make sure we have a record here. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, may I,
Oh, forgive me.
make a few
Please.
comments on the
Yes,
motion?
yes, to close.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate the work of the Development Committee, and I appreciate the work of the homeowners, and I too am somewhat torn by different considerations that have been brought forth today. I also think there's a consideration that has to be given not only to the homeowners, but to the property owner here, who is making an attempt through the developer to develop this property. The two issues that have been brought forth are density and traffic. I think the density issue is just something that we all here, including the homeowners, are going to have to get over at some point. It's never going to be, they're never going to be 40,000 square foot lots that are going to be developed in this kind of a development, because if you're 55 or older, you don't want a 40,000 square foot lot. The whole point of this development is to eliminate some of the things that you had to do when you owned a 40,000 square foot lot, like shovel snow and cut grass. So they're going to be smaller lots. So that issue is what it is, and at some point, maybe this too shall pass. Regarding the traffic, much has been made about the KOLA study and what has been suggested to be decisions that have already been made. All the development committee did was suggest, and the developer agreed, and it was my understanding that our Department of Transportation would cooperate, and so would the Highway Commissioner, to look for better ways to deal with the traffic on Purnell Road. Whether they be traffic calming, whether they be no left turn, whether they be speed signs, nothing has been etched in stone in terms of what has to be done. So the suggestion that people who live there are going to be put out because of the things that were suggested today is just not correct. There are no specific suggestions that anyone has to live with at this point, and it's still up for discussion. So to that extent, I think that we can all agree that the developer, when and if this development ever gets done, is going to want to make this as attractive as possible to the potential people who are going to live there, and that will include being able to manipulate up and down Purnell Road as easy as possible. So they're going to cooperate. They've said they would. That's one of the conditions. And certainly the Department of Transportation in DuPage County will do so as well. The traffic on Purnell Road, as I understand it, is abysmal. It's abysmal now. It's been abysmal for a long time. But apparently the people who live there I guess, could live with it. And perhaps, because it's a township road, the township road commissioner will have to deal with that because it's a township issue.
Where do you live?
My suggestion is that we do everything we can to alleviate the problem on Purnell Road, which all of the parties have agreed will be done. Whether or not that ultimately changes the designation from F to something better, we'll have to see. We have also been told by the traffic study and by those whose opinions I respect that the reality of Purnell Road is it's bad now and it's going to stay bad regardless of whether or not there's a development there or not. And I take that at face value. I'm not a traffic expert, but I will listen to people who are, as opposed to people who will speculate as to what may or may not be. Again, I understand and I respect the passion of the homeowners. I also respect the right of the property owners. This development is necessary for this county. The people who live around there may not think that this is the particular best place for it, but the reality is we need a development such as this, and at some point it's going to get developed one way or another. At least there's some control that we have over it currently under the current situation. So I'm going to be voting yes on it, and I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tornatore. There's been a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Tornatore.
Aye.
Zay.
No.
Chaplin.
Aye.
Covert.
Aye.
Desart.
Aye.
DeCiani. Eckhoff.
No.
Elliott.
No.
Hart.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Krajewski.
Aye.
Larson.
No.
Noonan.
Aye.
Ozog.
Aye.
Pachowski.
Aye.
Renahan.
No.
Rutledge.
No.
Selman.
Yeah. 10 voting aye, 6 voting nay. The resolution is adopted. Okay, thank you, Mr. Tornatore. On to the next order of business, Health and Human Services, Mr. DeCiani. Mr. DeCiani's not here, so there you go. Yeah, I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No committee update. I move approval of HHS Resolution 6820, 2020 to 2024 Draft Consolidated Plan for Housing and Community Development. First reading of the 2020 Annual Action Plan for CDBG, Home, ESG, and to receive HUD grants.
Okay, thank you. Such an articulate, very thorough explanation of that. I'm sorry I was distracted. But a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Renahan.
Aye.
Rutledge. Selman. Tornatore. Zay.
Aye.
Chaplin. Covert. Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff. Elliott. Hart. Healy. Krajewski. Larson. Noonan. Ozog. Pachowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry? You okay? Okay. Move approval of HHS P 5620 for approval of a contract purchase order for
Leave is granted.
baking company.
Sorry.
Okay. Move on HHS CO 5-20, increase in Pace Suburban Bus Service contract.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. A request for leave. Leave is granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Request to a motion to combine and approve items D, E, and F.
There's been a motion and a second to combine items D, E, and F. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The items are combined. Please proceed, Member Renahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. D, change order HHSP 287A 19, increasing weatherization program grant-funded healthy air, heating, and air.
E, change order HHSP 286A-19, amendment to resolution 286-19, another increase in weatherization, grant-funded, healthy air, heating and air. And finally, item F, change order HHSP 14A-20, another WEX grant-funded increase, Chicago United Industries.
There's been a motion and a second and a request for leave on these combined items. Leave is granted. Thank you very much. Thank you, Member Renahan. We move on to the next order of business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to combine items A, B, C, D in the Public Works agenda.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to combine the items A through D. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The items are combined. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of FMP 5720, a contract to Atlas Copco for preventive maintenance services. FMP 5820, contract to Eola Power LLC to provide uninterrupted power. PWP 5920, a contract with Univar USA to provide sodium bisulfate, and authorization for overnight travel for one Public Works staff member to attend the City Works training from April 13th to 16th in West Bend, Wisconsin.
Been a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Healy. Krajewski. Larson. Noonan. Ozog. Pachowski. Renahan. Rutledge. Selman. Tornatore. Zay. Chaplin. Covert. Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff. Elliott. Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. On to the order of technology, Mr. Greg Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one item today. I move on item A, a budget adjustment of total of $14,275 to cover FY19 Cherry Road Technologies invoices for the budget system implementation.
Been a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Hart.
Aye.
Healy. Krajewski. Larson. Noonan. Ozog. Pachowski. Renahan. Rutledge. Selman. Tornatore. Zay. Chaplin. Covert. Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff. Elliott.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hart. A fine report. On to the order of transportation, Member Don Pachowski.
Thank you. Good morning. Afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Move to approve DTR 6920, intergovernmental agreement between the County of DuPage and Addison Township Road District.
Motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Pachowski.
Aye.
Renahan. Rutledge. Selman. Tornatore. Zay. Chaplin. Covert. Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff. Elliott. Hart. Healy. Krajewski. Larson. Noonan. Ozog.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Pachowski.
I would move to combine and approve agenda items B, C, D, E, and F, which are all awarding resolutions.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay.
I would like to amend that and make it B through E and leave F off, which we will handle separately.
Okay, so there's a motion to combine items B through E. In the second, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Items B, C, D, and E are combined. Please proceed.
Thank you. Move to approve DTR 7020, awarding resolution to Seabird Landscaping for vegetative maintenance program. Move to approve DTR 7120, awarding resolution to Seabird Landscaping for various highway landscape maintenance. Move to approve DTR 7220, awarding resolution to Thorn Electric for traffic signal installation. Move to approve DTR 7330, a issue to Thorn Electric for traffic signal modernization.
It's been a motion and a second, and leave is requested or leave is granted. Please proceed, Mr. Pachowski.
I would...
Let the record reflect Member Chaplin is leaving the room on item F. Please proceed, Mr. Pachowski.
All right, move to approve DTR 7420, awarding resolution to Mead Electric for lighting and traffic signal LED upgrades.
Been a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Pachowski.
Aye.
Renahan. Rutledge. Selman. Tornatore. Zay. Chaplin. Covert. Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff. Elliott. Hart. Healy. Krajewski. Larson. Noonan. Ozog.
Resolution is adopted. Mr. Pachowski.
Thank you. Move to approve an amendment to DTR 952B-18, which is issued to the Illinois State Highway Authority for rehabilitation of a bridge.
There's been a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Pachowski.
Aye.
Renahan. Rutledge. Selman. Tornatore. Zay. Chaplin. Covert. Desart. DeCiani. Eckhoff. Elliott. Hart. Healy. Krajewski. Larson. Noonan. Ozog.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Pachowski.
To approve an amendment to DTR 149-8-18, which is an integral agreement with the County of DuPage and the Village of Woodridge for improvements.
Leave is granted. Mr. Pachowski.
Move to approve change order DTP 2048-14, which is issued to Engineering Resources Associates Professional Design Engineering.
Leave is granted.
Move to combine and approve items J, D, J, K, and L, which are approvals of contracts.
Okay, so there's been a motion to combine these items. Do you have a question on the motion to combine? Okay, so there's a motion to combine J, K, and L. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The items are combined. Please proceed, Mr. Pachowski, and then we'll recognize
6020, a contract with Fleet Pride, Inc. for heavy-duty truck springs and brakes as needed. Move to approve DTP 6120, a contract to Curry Motors for one 2020 Ford F-250 XL pickup truck. And move to approve DTP 6220, a contract to Wheatland Title Company for professional title services.
We have a question, Member Rutledge.
Just a quick question about item K. The guidelines are 150,000 miles or 12 years of service, and this vehicle did not hit either one of those benchmarks, so my curiosity is why we're replacing it already.
It's mileage and the age, but also the maintenance inspections of it. So when it gets to the point that the vehicle is becoming too costly to continue to maintain, or if it's an older vehicle, which is not the case in this case. Typically, it's just they're going beyond their continued useful service life, the maintenance repair history.
Thank you, Chris.
Mr. Pachowski. Been a motion and a second on these three items. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. We could entertain a motion to leave. Leave is granted. Mr. Pachowski.
Thank you. I'd move to combine and approve items M and N, which are authorizations travel.
M&N. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The items are combined. Please proceed, Mr. Pachowski.
Move to approve authorization travel for the traffic engineer to go to Davenport, Iowa, on June 17th. And then move to approve authorization travel for chief engineer to Peoria, April 20th through the 22nd.
Fabulous. Peoria. Is there a motion? Seconded. Request for leave. Leave is granted. Thank you, Mr. Pachowski. Done a fine job. We move on to the order of business entitled Discussion. We're familiar with this. Required by a state law, the Public Act 99-0646, Pension Obligation Projection required by Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act. Is there anyone seeking recognition on this item? Seeing none, hearing none, we move on to the order of old business. Anyone seeking recognition on the order of old business? Seeing none, hearing none, we move on to the order of new business. Anyone seeking recognition on the order of new business? Seeing none, hearing none, I know that we do not have any item before us on the order of executive session, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Been a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting to Tuesday, March 10th at 10 a.m. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Meeting adjourned. Don't forget, we've got ethics training.